3, 5. Okay, go.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have honor to open our conference titled Sharing Health Data and AI Insights for Longevity in Europe and around the world. Our international conference will open questions that are urgent in today's quickly developing world of endless possibilities with artificial intelligence on the one hand, and on the other hand, tragical aging of population and the burden of age-related diseases. We are finding key important thing that connects artificial intelligence and healthy longevity in digital data from the field of healthcare and personal health data. This data could help us to quicker find medical answers to biological aging that is leading cause of death and suffering in the world. Any success in fight with biological aging will be measured in saving of millions of lives and sparing billions of dollars. In our conference, we will facilitate lectures from the leaders and experts in the fields connected with our topic. My name is Martin Lipaušek, and I will serve as a chair in this event. The initiative and organization of the conference was done by Didier Cornell, to whom I wish to say big thanks. His persistence and effort is moving the field forward to recognize the importance of sharing of health data for longevity and other sciences. Without further ado, I wish to start with our first speaker, Anton Kuluga. Anton Kulaga is a bioinformatician working on life extension and investigating aging at Systems Biology of Aging Group, Institute of Biochemistry of the Romanian Academy of Sciences. Since 2015, he has dedicated his efforts to multi-omics analysis and has accumulated extensive experience in bioinformatics. In particular, Anton has specialized in building next-generation sequencing pipelines, analyzing large datasets, and applying machine learning to gene expression patterns. He is an active open-source developer contributing to multiple bioinformatics projects. Thank you very much. So, Anton, the floor is yours.
Okay, so thank you very much for being here. I also have to update you that now I am a member of Georg's Fueling Group at Rostock Medical University, Germany. Actually, what I will be presented is connected also with my new position there. And I want to address probably the thing that make many people curious is how to actually leverage this tremendous, exciting progress that we are having with large language models for solving aging. And the project that I have been working, I think, since April is actually dedicated to this. It's called Longevity Genie. And the way how it started was that, as many other people, I was excited. So with like tremendous progress and growth with large language models. So here you can see how fast you need to get 100 million users, and ChatGPT, it was really a huge success. And also we have so many different models now that I decided actually to apply it to what is close to me. And at the same time, I'm also a co-founder of JustDNA-seq open source project that allows you to upload your genomic data, and you can get your gene variants analyzed, and it's open source. It means that you can just run it on your laptop and you can fully see what is happening. And here is a screenshot actually of from my own genome, some of the gene variants that I have. And I started just by asking questions about longevity related gene variants. And what I discovered and what we are still actually seeing now is that we are really happy how well large language models answer to popular general questions. But so, for example, here in ApoE, if you ask it, you get reasonable response. But when you start asking something more specific and something less known, less popular, you often get fake information called hallucinations, or you get general informations. And we did such experiments with multiple topics, and we saw that there is a big problem, and also a problem that when arises when you ask some not very popular scientific questions. And by that time I was in that Zuzalu pop-up city, and we had a hackathon, and I decided to actually address it. And what we came up with is that actually existing LLMs, they are pretty good. They just don't have enough aging-related, biology-related specific sources. And the easiest way to actually improve the results is to, as you see in this picture, just orchestrate and give the sources to them. And as a validation, I had some good results. So you can see that FOXO3, the gene variants in those genes are pro-longevity. And when I initially, when I asked regular ChatGPT, as you can see here, most of the results were either useless, or it were like general information, not specifically for RSIDs here that happened. And when we made some improvements from our just so first we used our project that is our collaborator, Longevity GPT, and it gives some scientific knowledge. So it's got improvements and results. And then we used our own databases that it could automatically query. And we got even better results. And we created this project called Longevity Genie. That's the idea is like a Swiss knife, that it gives power of LLMs to use Longevity GPT for literature, then different vector databases for embedding search, and different modules to actually conduct the search. Originally, we had chatbot, and with additional sources, you see the answers that most of it is green, so it's and also it's with references, so it gives really good results. It's actually now something that you can test yourself, because now with ChatGPT, so we have this Longevity Genie website that refers to everything that we did, and you here have custom GPT that's now available through ChatGPT store. And here, for example, you have some example questions, and it's now actually, you see here, it starts action. By action means that we taught it to call some the methods and databases. So here you see our answer, but if you ask the same, and that's what I will actually do, but with regular ChatGPT, is that so with regular ChatGPT, let's see what it gives. So here you saw like really information about like specific variants, what does it do, and how it refers to longevity. If you have T, it's better for longevity, it's 0.16 weight. It gives like very detailed information on diseases and pathways. And here you see general GPT, and in general GPT, you see that I couldn't find specific information. So at Hackathon, we did it with LangChain and with some code, but now we released those in ChatGPT store. So we made additional work, and you can see Genetics Genie. And coming forward, the way how things are implemented is that when you are using where extending your large language model, you have different options. One option, if you can fine-tune or retrain it, but it's actually really resource and time consuming because you have to prepare training data, and LLMs are quite big. Or you can just extend its generation. And what I mean by generation, it means that large language models is something like generating of a next token, and means technically next word. So ChatGPT, Llama, and many other really popular large language models are decoder-based large language models. That means that, for example, on this picture, you start with some text like "we need to," and then it starts adding new words. And for each new word, it checks previous one, so like a context. And when you already gave some initial text and you got some data from the databases, it of course knows more and can answer better. So the idea is at some point you just teach it to ask for additional sources. You give the sources as a text, and it takes them into account in its answers. And another important part, and you can see it on a picture, is that because it learned a lot about the language, is that it represents the language in some kind of multidimensional space called embedding space, where common things are pretty near each other. So like in this picture, you can see that cat and kittens and dogs are closer than bananas and apples. And that's how we actually use it. So for text search, we use this embedding search. For yes, so here are like some technical details, and some of the results that we got better than original ChatGPT. And the other thing that we started to push on after Hills gave us generous support in autumn was actually using agents. So we prototyped the agents in Zuzalu, but now now some of the capabilities of agents are available also in custom ChatGPT. So a few words how it works is that we can, so that large language models, it can actually make queries that can be interpreted with the code, and such code will call the tools. So this is typical React diagram when LLM, it can, so user asks questions, then LLM actually thinks what is needed for the questions. And sometimes if it says I need to make a search, it makes an action and then it's interpreted and the program code runs appropriate search, returns it again to LLM, and LLM does the final answer. This is called React paradigm. And here are some examples. So this is with gene variants. Also, this is the way how we typically debug it. So we have like chains of calls. And we also did, and in code, we had it like a special parsable annotations in Python. But we also did some work with clinical trials. And we have custom GPT that you all also can use called the Clinical Trials GPT. And the way how it, so in case of custom GPTs, the way how it works is that so here I open the Edit GPT button. And here I can configure the instructions, the conversational starters, and I also explain it's the structure of the data that I deal with. And the most important part is that we implemented a bunch of REST APIs. Technically, it is just some web services that it can call. And here, actually, you instructed to call those web services that gives like information about data to be able to actually give the results. And here, like example that, for example, what it will do now, like I ask, for example, I want to solve a problem, find a good clinical trial for my grandpa that has fatty liver disease. So first what it does, it checks if it needs to call the tool. If it needs to call the tool, it makes an action. And then you allow it to make it, and then it calls clinical trials on clinical. So I will just show the service that we made. And after it called it, it gives the detailed results. So you see that there's something in Hong Kong, something in the United States that you can enroll, and you know the parameters, and you can make decisions based on this. And we also have other typical questions that you can ask. And we plan to actually increase the number of databases. So now we also have NH, we have DrugEdge, and a bunch of here on the website you can see a bunch of other agents that eventually will integrate together. So it will address most of the aging related queries, and we are continuing this work now. So here is some links about our open source code repository. We are also working, and with generous help of Rostock and Georg Fuhlen with preparing some open source large language models on some fine tuning. And there are many things that can be improved that I will probably skip through this. And yeah, also some other just examples where we get better answers on drugs, on other related questions. And yeah, so far we think
you are probably muted, Anton, or the sound disappeared suddenly.
Maybe his battery, he has problem with battery because you can see on the screen battery critical low.
Maybe let's wait a few seconds, and if it's not working, maybe George and I don't know.
Yeah, I think I could start and then Anton finishes once he's back.
Yeah, I got like the toughest ever out of time warning with discharged laptop. So yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, so that's what we are working on, and we really want you to go there and play with it and look into our code and put your suggestions or pull requests or other improvements. And with this, I'm happy to let Professor Georg Fuhlen talk into more applicable and more important for specific geroscience interventions topic on applying AI for geroscience.
Okay, thank you very much, Anton. Does someone has a special question for Anton? Otherwise, we continue. Yes, Felix? Okay, I think that this is a mistake. All right, so before we continue, I just wish everyone to invite to comment on the document the Didier Cornilla shared in the chat. It is the text about the document of this conference. So you are welcome to read it and comment it. And now we will continue with Georg Fuhlen. He is a full professor of medical bioinformatics and director of the Institute for Biostatistics and Informatics in the Medicine of Aging Research in Rostock, Germany. He has worked in MIT in US and in many German universities. His main research interests include system biology and bioinformatics in aging research and developing personal approaches in the medicine of aging. So thank you very much. And Georg, the floor is yours.
If you think you speak, you
Georg,
have to
you're
unmute
muted.
yourself.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, hello. So I'm grateful for the invitation. And what I'm presenting is currently purely theoretical. But of course, it's supposed to foster a work like what Anton has just been presenting, which is really exciting. And I hope this moves geroscience ahead. What is geroscience? It's a pretty popular word, but not everybody may be aware of it. It's an idea now maybe 10 years old. And essentially, it's very simple. It's just biological aging is a major modifiable driver of disease, dysfunction, and death. And then the idea is that there are geroprotectors, so there's interventions, and we seek those interventions that essentially kill the driver, kill the biological aging. And one important tool is biomarkers of aging, because to kill the driver, we must know the driver. We need to measure this driver, this aging process, as accurately as possible. But what is a biomarker of aging? In the widest sense, that's already some time ago that I did this with a philosopher, terminologist. A biomarker of aging is any feature that predicts a temporarily later feature of disease, dysfunction, or death better than chronological age. But that's a very wide definition. At that time, Alan Cohen was involved, and he actually presented a talk at the Biomarkers of Aging consortium meeting at the BAC, where he then actually got much closer to this very wide definition. It's a different story. And the Biomarkers of Aging Consortium, as I just mentioned, that's definitely worth looking or going to the website. It's a website not just with meeting recordings, but also benchmarking code. There are competitions, prizes could be won. There are papers, and I think important papers. And one important one is, again, this definition thing. So if you really want to know what you're talking about, you want to define it as precisely as possible. And here our consensus definition also revolves around prediction. We want to predict the future, and in this case, biological age. And then what is biological age? It's a level of age-dependent biological changes, such as macular and cellular damage, molecular and cellular damage accumulation. And in practical use, that's just one number. And I would say this one number, this your biological age, is the best ideal predictor for your future health and survival. And this was published in the summer, and now we've got a new paper, and that one is about the most important aspect of biomarkers of aging, namely their validation. In the end, you really want to know whether a biomarker of aging does its job, whether it's measuring what you assume it measures, whether the measurements are reliable, robust, and so on. And this table too is really an important read for, I would say, for anyone who is involved in this field. So it's about data maintainers, data creators, people in validation, doing validation studies, biomarker developers. There are different target stakeholders. And the recommendations, so I'm just mentioning 3 of them. Towards robustness in biomarkers of aging, you, for example, want to include multiple diverse populations. If you see something in them and it's always about the same thing, you can be much more certain about it. That's a biomarker of aging in particular. And then, of course, you want to have standardization, harmonization. Also, if you want to go to regulatory agencies like the FDA or the EMA, you really need this, this validity of the concept of the measurements, and it must be demonstrated in a standardized and harmonized fashion. And finally here, interpretability. That's also really important. You want to understand why this biomarker of aging is actually performing well. And so that's validation. And then for longevity clinics, you could call it, it's really in a way clinical work down to earth. And going further, for me, the key task is evaluating those neuroprotector inventions. And the key ingredient is to evaluate the intervention effects, what the intervention does to the biomarkers of aging, to validate the biomarkers of aging. And the key question, what is a good evaluation? Which requirements do we have for good evaluation results? Also, how can I help in this? And similar to what I just presented, you are coming up with lists of requirements. What do you want? And it's important to have complete and comprehensive and good lists of requirements. So that's why I'm so much interested in feedback to that. Maybe in the discussion or contact me later on. And so I came up with this compilation. And one part of this compilation is that in terms of requirements, the utmost importance, of course, correctness and usefulness. So it must be true what the evaluation says, the method that does the evaluation, and the results that they are correct and true. But they must, of course, also be useful. It doesn't help if you're just producing some 2 sentences, but they are not meaningful. So correctness and usefulness on the one hand, and then the other major point is comprehensiveness. So you don't want to miss important aspects. And then interpretability, explainability in a clear and concise manner. And and this has some consequences for the choice of the method. And if the method is an AI method, you could, for example, then design prompts in that direction. Various possibilities. But what I'm presenting here is essentially valid for any kind of analysis method. And so correctness and usefulness, you want to use benchmark methods. And you probably want to do results checking independently if possible. And what's always important is you want to check data quality so that you don't have a garbage in, garbage out phenomenon. And then, and this is more specific now, clearly now expressed for AI, regarding comprehensiveness. You want to have a maximum data available, and then retrieval augmented generation is a probably very, very important aspect that in this case, a large language model, for example, gets itself up to date by looking on the internet. And maybe you probably want integration of tools. You probably want to use some bioinformatics data tools, retrievals tools for subtasks. And this is a big advantage of AI. AI can in very great ways enable some comprehensiveness. But there's some price often to pay. It's in terms of correctness and usefulness, but also in terms of interpretability, explainability. So and many people say AI, that's just black boxes, but that's not really true. There, on the one hand, there are no possibilities to get a visualization of how such a model calculates its answer. At least they're in the beginnings. You can get some idea, and maybe more important, even but also complementarily useful is that you ask a model or in general. You try to come up with an explicit explanation for the answer, how the model came up with the answer, or how the method came up with the answer. And this could also be done by some auxiliary tools. So those are 4 very general requirements. They are actually true for any kind of analysis. Now I'm becoming more specific, and this is requirements for an analysis of an intervention, biomedical intervention. And then really important is causal mechanisms. You want to look at causal, causal evidence for what you then see as a report. And it's usually not so useful to have mere correlations, especially if you're going for interventions. There should be attacking causal mechanisms. And if you are intervening into something that is just correlative, it usually won't help you so much. And so randomized controlled clinical trials are actually, in a way, the best way to establish causal evidence. So for any AI, the kind of prompt instruction is use causal analysis tools as possible, or maybe RCT data. And of course, consider underlying biological mechanisms for some better understanding. And then what is often is neglected is toxicity or side effects. So you want to consider both effects and side effects. And maybe there you could use some specific knowledge like about adverse outcome pathways. There's not much communication between toxicologists and aging researchers, but I think this could be valuable in selecting interventions with a large therapeutic window. And they should usually be the best ones, where there's a long way from the dose with an effect to the dose that is ultimately toxic. Then I'm proposing some idea of what I call a holistic analysis. You really want to not just go for molecular markers or blood laboratory markers, but that there are also social and environmental markers. And in the end, in the very end, there are economic factors, sustainability to be considered for interventions. And then, as I already mentioned, reproducibility, standardization, harmonization. So use of standards would be some prompt to the models in particular, and they can come in various ways, like PICO, population intervention, comparator outcome is a very, very simple one, but also quite complex ontologies can be used so that you have got more standardization, harmonization. And finally, now especially for neuroscience intervention, I think there are 2 things, and I would love to know about more. It's about, do you really want to go for longitudinal data? Because longitudinal data are the best ones to tell you what time does to a biomedical entity. So, and of course, you want to know, if possible, you want to refer to known mechanisms of aging. That gives you some confidence that you are really dealing with aging-related or aging-associated processes, like hormones of aging or similar consensus listing. Yeah, and yeah, is there anything else? I'm really interested in that. And of note, as I already mentioned, that all those requirements also hold for any classical analysis approaches. And now I'm coming to a study on strawberries. Some of you know that I'm working with strawberries, and but in this case, it's a case of in point of what AI could be doing better. And this is just a brief scheme of this intervention study, human intervention study for 10 weeks. And we have had 5 groups. And I'm simplifying that just by a gradient. From group to group, 1, group 2, group 3, group 4, group 5, this was more and more what I call strawberry stuff, more and more polyphenol-rich nutrition, particular strawberries, dark strawberries, capers, and olive oil. And this was also in time, it got more, but also from group to group. And then in the analysis of this data, we were thinking, could there be some gene activation from the group 1, which got just a little bit of strawberries, to the group 5, which got really huge amounts of it on the day before the blood draw. And the gene activation, this was done by Ritaru Secchi in my group, it means we are looking at changing genes and whether they highlight known biological processes based on database knowledge. So there's a gene ontology database, some of you may know about it, and it tells you about the changing genes as is an overlap with what is known, with what is actually in the database. In this case, it's just pure statistics in the end. We found that there's better respiration, that's the electron transport chain, there's better immunity, and then what is most exciting is cell killing and apoptotic signaling. And maybe, just maybe, that's a hypothesis for which we need much more evidence still. Maybe we were able to introduce some senolysis by this high amounts of nutrition-based polyphenols. This is actually now published in Aging Biology. This is a very similar plot. Here's KEGG pathways. KEGG is a pathway database. And you again see respiration. This is oxidophosphorylation. You see TNF signaling, which is actually down. So inflammation is down, which is nice. But you also see things like Huntington disease and Parkinson disease. What have they got to do with nutrition and with this study? Well, the KEGG pathways for Huntington, they actually feature many oxidophosphorylation genes. That's why. So many respiratory related genes. But now imagine, and that's my idea, that you have AI considering the context of the gene list that we have and all the full text papers it could get a hold of. And I believe we will get much better, much more detailed, much more in-depth analysis of such study results. That's what I'm really looking forward to for our next studies, better analysis by bioinformatics plus AI. Yeah, that's it actually means that I'm now at the end of the talk. So one point, main point was, what is a good evaluation? We are also going to have are preparing for a company startup in this direction from October onwards. And yeah, and of course, which requirements do we have for good AI results in particular? Some of the answers I try to come up with is, of course, correctness and usefulness by benchmarking and checking, comprehensiveness, maybe actually combine large language models with deep large knowledge graphs. They are far less well known, but they are also really an important way of storing knowledge, and they can be combined with large language models in very interesting and exciting ways. Then, of course, explainability, interpretability towards biological mechanisms, visualizations, consideration of causality, toxicity, sustainability, and standardization, and of course on longitudinal data and non-biology of aging. But yeah, with those answers come new questions. One big question is, will there ever be a validated set of validated biomarker of aging, or a set of them really validated? Most people say there are none yet. And this, for example, a problem with epigenetic clots, that they may change if you intervene into the methylation, for example, with alpha-ketoglutarate. So this is really one major problem. And on that basis, we hope that we accomplish the mission of evaluating geoprotectors with confidence. Because if you are asking people in their midlife to take them for a very long time, you want to be pretty sure that they work until the very end, extending health and life. And particularly, we believe there is a strong added value of AI, also based on what Anton has been describing. But we must prove it, and that is not easy, because there are also many things that could possibly go wrong. But if you don't do anything, if there's no intervention, we come up with the expected outcomes are of course known, and we don't want the outcomes as they are. Yeah, and with that, I really thank you for your attention, and I'm available for questions. So
Thank you very much, Georg.
let me know. Yes, and give me advice. I'm really interested in your help and in this case as well.
So someone has at the moment a question for Georg? All right, maybe later. And then we continue to Marianne Vendera. She holds a master's degree in international security and another master's degree in private and international law from Pantheon SAS University. She's an European projects mission manager at Health Data Hub. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen then.
All right.
Is it okay? Okay, this is something that is going to be really less technical than the previous presentation. I'm working at the French Health Data Hub. It's a public body that has been created in 2019, and the main objective of our organization is to help researchers access health data for a project of national of public interest. I don't know if yes. So the Health Data Hub itself has really been set up in the framework of a roadmap in France to foster health data sharing. And we have like various services that we offer to researchers, to startups, to firms. And within the whole panorama of projects that we have, we are really interested in the European landscape and the new European health data access, the future, European health data space that is going to be implemented really soon. So we are driving one of the main projects for the implementation of this first sectorial data space in Europe. But we also have other initiatives in Europe. So if I may say a few words about the Health Data Hub. So as I said, it was something that was set up in 2019, just after the COVID crisis, because we really saw that there was a need to have access to health data regularly and easily. So basically what we do is that we facilitate access to the main national database, the French National Health Data System, which is one of the largest health database, one of the largest medical administrative database in the world. What we do is that we also help project owners in the. I'm sorry, can you see my screen, or is it?
Yes, no problem.
It's a little
No
bit
problem.
smaller.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a bit smaller. Okay, sorry. Okay, I do like that.
Yes, now it's better.
Okay, so we act as a single gateway for health data in France. So when a researcher wants to carry out a project and he wants to access some data, whether the data to the main medical administrative database in France or other data, he can reach out to us to help him in the process of accessing the data. We also are building a data catalog with other database of interest that we have identified. And we also provide a secure state-of-the-art technological platform project owners so they can access a platform with computing capability, AI tools, and so on. So what we do is first we help people in the regulatory applications. In France, when you want to access data, you had to go through an ethics committee and through the Data Protection Authority, and sometimes it's a really complicated and lengthy process. So what we do is really accompany the researcher, review with them the protocols, their application, and we also provide training and support to raise awareness on what the French data system is. And we have a support desk also to help researchers if they have any issue with their application. And something that will be discussed in the European health data space is also the focus on information and transparency on whole projects, because citizens are eager to know what is being done with their health data. So we also act as a transparency portal. We have a public register of projects with so far more than 600 projects registered. And the first results will be published soon on the Health Data Hub portal. So it's also a hub of information for citizens. The state-of-the-art platform that we are providing, it was a need formulated by the ecosystem. But it also has to be emphasized that in France, we also have other data holders that provide their own secure processing environments, and that the technological offering of the Health Data Hub is only complementing this existing offer and not replacing it. But what we provide is a French cloud technology platform that allows projects to have access to elastic storage and high computing capacity, that allow also for data source to be linked. So, for example, you can come with a database of one hospital, and in the Health Data Hub, we can help you link this data with the main medical administrative database I was mentioning before. This is also a platform that can be used by a huge number of users at the same time, and that meets the highest security requirements. Because in the future European health data space, there will also be several security requirements that would be needed for any platform to be able to be used to process health data. I'm going to go, I think, quite quickly on the next slide. I don't seem to. I'm sorry, I think my computer is quite slow. Very sorry, I think I'm going to keep sharing, but
Yes, now we can see. Yeah.
Okay. As also, we have a catalog that includes this healthcare claim database, but based on the several calls that we launch, of the call for interest that we launch to fund several projects, we are also aiming at including more and more databases. And we have a great diversity so far, but we are aiming at having more. So we have cohorts, we have disease registries, we also have some hospital data warehouses. And so this is a catalog that is being built progressively with the different projects that we accompany. We also offer other services. We are developing a metadata catalog to make it easier for people to do the data discovery and to identify easily the data that are available, their content and its quality, and if this data set is ready for their study. We are also developing a new tool to industrialize data linkage of data from different sources, but direct data linkage. We also have a tool that is in development to help citizens exercise their personal rights to opt out, for example. And we are working on implementing interoperability standards such as the OMOP CDM model So we have worked within the French medical healthcare claim database to standardize that with this standard that is, I think, from the US, and that is being promoted among Europe, to help also project owners to really see clearly in all the database, and to see it from a patient point of view, and not only from a healthcare claim database. I'm just going to skip this slide and maybe go directly to the European aspects of our work. So as I said, the European Commission has identified the sharing of health data as one of the main priority in the near futures, and we have to deal with semantic, like with data that are not interoperable semantically or syntaxically, with governance for accessing health data that is really fragmented and complicated, with tarification that is not the same depending if you are like a private company or researcher, or if you are in country A or country B. And what the European Commission is trying to do is to have like a governance framework to ease the sharing of health data. And one of the impacts of this future regulation, it's currently still in discussion at the European Commission, the European Parliament, and the Council of the European Union. The aim is to address these major barriers to the second use of data. So far there are like huge time limits for data holders and health data access bodies. Means that, for example, in France, if you want to request access to data sets, you have to wait sometimes up to 18 months to get access to the data. You don't always know also who you have to ask access to. The data request, the data permits, the data access processes are not harmonized within Europe. And there are also a lot of questions regarding GDPR, the implementation of GDPR. So all of these aspects that you can see in the slides, they are the aspects that are going to be addressed by this European health database. And what we do, we at the Health Data Hub, we are coordinating a pilot project, which is called the Health Data at EU Pilot Project, which will try to build a beta version of this European health data space. So what we do is that we have partnered up with 9 countries, 17 partners, and we are building a network of data platform across Europe to see if the future European health data space and its requirements will enable research at the European level, will ease and reduce the time limits, the time constraints. And that's a project that we have been carried out for 1.5 years now. And it's run in parallel with 5 scientific cross-border use cases. The aim is really to demonstrate that if you have an easy access to a metadata catalog, to unified processes for requesting access, to interoperability, quality assurance standards among Europe, there is really an added value of having European-wide research. And one example that we can make is for the research on diseases. For example, if you live in Denmark, you won't have a lot of data on rare diseases because of the small population. But if you can have data on rare diseases that are really interoperable among European countries and that you can search easily, that would be a huge help for the research community. So what we do in this project, we really go through the data discovery, the data permit request, data preparation, use of data. And so you can see in this user journey that we are working on various aspects of the user journey of a researcher. And we are also building this IT infrastructure So far, France is connected to the central services that are provided by the European Commission, and the objective is to have like as many national platform nodes as possible, but also to have European agencies. In our project, we have the ECDC and the European Medicine Agency that are involved in the project, but we also want to include research infrastructure nodes. So that's the main architecture that we are looking for. I don't know if I need to elaborate more on this, but just so you know, in the European Commission, one of the standards is the DECAT AP standards, and we are working to develop a standardized health extension for this descriptive metadata. And we are also working on standards on to address semantic interoperability, data quality insurance, security prerequisites. And to do that, in our project, we have these 5 use cases, and the people responsible for data interoperability and quality are regularly interviewing the use cases leaders to know what the main barriers they are encountering, what are the difficulties. If it's a use case with like 4 different countries, for database for 4 different countries, they can see what are the main issue regarding interoperability, and it's really a partnership and an observational role for this part of the project to really come up with guidelines for standards later. We also have one part on everything that is regulatory and legal compliance. So as I said, we aim at developing a unique data permit request form that would be harmonized among Europe. So when a researcher would like to do a research, let's say on breast cancer, he can first browse the metadata catalog at the European level to see which data sets are available across Europe. And then when he will have identified these data sets, he would be able to do one single data request that would be then dispatched to all of the countries. And each country would be responsible for delivering access or not, but at least from a user point of view, from the research point of view, it would be really easier to have this unified form. In a nutshell, these are the use cases we are working with. So you see, it encompasses a large variety of subjects. We have one use cases that is led by the European Medicine Agency. The goal is to see if with the future European Health Data Space, the European Medicine Agency will be able to carry its mission more easily, and if the regulation provides for the right tools. We also have a use case that involves 5 different countries that is trying to make the link between COVID and vulnerable subpopulations. So here it's interesting because we're trying to link socioeconomic data with clinical data. So that's also a big challenge because, for instance, in France, we don't have socioeconomic data at individual level, but in other countries they have. So yeah, that's also one of the objective of this project is to show the discrepancies between the data that are available between the different countries, but how we can still try to make studies and to ask for the access to the right data to carry the research. We have already reached some deliverables. We have a project of concept for the platform. I'm not going to dwell on that because I think I'm already running out of time, and those results are available on our website. So I will put the address of the website in the chat, and please feel free to ask any question.
Okay, thank you very much, Marianne. We have one question in chat about from Hans Constant. Maybe Hans, you can ask it now.
Yes, Marianne, great talk. Thank you. And I've been a program manager for a year and a half for the Belgian Health Data Agency, so I know what you're talking about in your pains. I have a question about the data catalog. So it is ultimately important that this data is not just available for France. So I already saw that you're doing the DCAT extension together with Cienzano in Belgium. But how open will this data catalog be for European citizens, so non-French citizens? And how do you ensure interoperability across all these languages?
So are you talking about data catalog or metadata catalog?
Yes, the data catalog.
Okay. For that
what's the difference between a data catalog and a metadata catalog? That's
yeah.
the
No,
first
I
question.
was wondering because for this data catalog so far, I was just having a discussion before with the data departments of the Health Data Hub, and so right now they are building it's only French databases, and they are going to see what they will take from the European Health DCAT extension and how it's going to feed it in the French metadata catalog, and then from there I think they will be able to. I think the idea is for all these database to implement the Health DCAT extension in our catalog. So then, in the end, when you will be researching or asking access to data, you will go to the platform of the European Commission to browse all the metadata catalog, and if it's correctly implemented in France, that's the goal. I think you will be able to see the various databases that we have. But I will have to ask the data department for more clarification on that. I'm sorry, I don't think I'm qualified to answer that, but I will ask.
Okay, thank you. I'll follow up then.
Thank you. And now Didier has a question.
Yes, it's kind of thank you, Marianne, and by the way, thank you also, George and Anton. I have also questions, but it's for the general debate. Thank you, Marianne. It's a bit continuation of the question of Hans. You speak about a project of having a general way to ask for authorization. And is in this general way to ask for an authorization, will there be a kind of time frame, so a maximum delay to have the answer? Because I think this is one of the biggest problems at the moment. Like you mentioned that in France, I just read a few days ago that it was an average of 9 months for the between the moment you ask and the moment you have the answer. So that's my first question. And my second question, also related to this process, is Aldo, maybe you can stop your mic. So my second question is it possible, will it be possible for scientists outside of the European Union also to ask for data, or will it be only for European scientists? Thank you.
Okay, so for the first question, that's something we are testing right now, is to have, when you are sending your form, to have the status updates. So your request has been handled. This is something that we are working on, and in the EHDS regulation, you will have strict deadline. So the system would ideally, the discussion are not set yet, but the timeline that are put in the regulation is that when you ask for permits, the Health Data Access Body has 2 months or 3 months to grant or deny you access, renewable ones, and then the data holder has 2 months or 3 months, renewable ones, to make the data available to the Health Data Access Body. And then this Health Data Access Body gives the data to the data applicants. So the maximum from the moment where you ask for the access to data and when you have access to data would be 6 months. In the end, and in the platform that we are creating, it's they are testing this status update to know if your request as a user has been handled by the health data access body. The data request has been sent to the data holder. The data holder has sent the data to the health data access body, and so on. This is a feature that we are working on. And for your second question, in the regulation, it's provided that any natural or legal person can ask for data access. So it means that in the future, anyone could ask. So it can be a student from the US or a student from China, and then it would be up to the health data access body to process the request and to see if it meets all the criteria of the European health data space. So there are criteria of there are a list of prohibited purpose, a list of good purposes, a list of requirements that you have to check. But in principle, everyone would be able to ask. Our Finnish colleagues from FinData told us that usually it's research institutes or companies that ask for access, and they really have like rarely a natural person asking access, but it's a possibility under the new regulation.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Hans, you raised your hand.
Yeah, very quickly following up on the question of Didier, because you're saying indeed it takes 9 months to 18 months, very similar in Belgium and very frustrating. Now you're going to squeeze it to 6 months, which is fantastic already, but it's still a long time, to be honest, right? And my question is, on top of that, is we've seen this also in the Scandinavian countries doing analysis is, do you do this like in a federated way or not? So how scalable is the process of the 6 months? Because in Belgium, we took the approach, and I think the Netherlands, Austria, Ireland is also doing that on a federated way. That means that you make the scripts to call the data, but you don't push the data. So can you explain how scalable this make, how fast you can make, and how you work then on the federated analytics part of it, because that could save a lot of time.
I take the question, but on the federated analytics, I cannot answer, but I take the question and I will come back to you on the data catalog and the federated.
Okay, no worries.
Sorry.
No worries. But I'll send you the question, Marianne, then you can forward it and maybe put it on the form, or I'll put it in the document. Okay?
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very well. Thank you very much. Now we go to the next speaker, who is Didier Cornel from Brussels. He advocates for research in favor of much longer healthy lifespan. In his capacity, he's notably the co-president of Healthy Life Extension Society, HILS, and the founding member as well as board member of International Longevity Alliance. Didier, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Martin. I will share the screen. I suppose it is working. If nobody is saying that it's not working, it's working. And I will begin with a few very fast facts about longevity that most people here know about, but maybe less people who are really only working on health data. So today, like every day, about 120,000 people will die of diseases related to old age. So all those diseases together are causing the death of about 90%, are causing about 90% of the deaths in a country like Belgium or France. In the world, that's about 70%, and even in the poorest country, it is still about 50%. So when we die of old age, we die mostly of cardiovascular diseases, cancers, neurodegenerative diseases, but actually that's the elephant in the room. In most cases, when we die of physical problems, it's related to old age, even for infectious diseases like COVID, of course, even when we are falling and so on and so on. It is also important to know that actually we are not concerning average lifespan, we are progressing, but concerning the maximal lifespan, we are not progressing, or almost not. The oldest person in the world was Jeanne Calment. She died when she was 122 years. It's already almost not far away from 30 years ago. So it will be at least 30 years between the moment, between the death of Jeanne Calment and somebody going up further than 122 years. And the first person who reached 100 years of age, it was Terentia, the widow of Cicero, so more than 2,000 years ago. And today, the oldest woman in the world is only 116, and the oldest man 114. Also, there was just a few years ago, for the first time since World War II, a decrease of life expectancy, and this during 2 years. So in 2020 and in 2021, so for the first time in 75 years, and it was a spectacular one. You have so more than about 1.6 year of life expectancy decrease. So we have for the first time since World War II a disconnection between technological progress and level of wellness and level of wellness probably, and level of life expectancy certainly. I think it is very probably possible to find a treatment against aging, but for this we need, it will be complicated and expensive, and we need, among other things, big data. So now a few facts about big data for health. So first, where is the big data for health? Of course, in the scientific literature, but more in your smartphone and in the data which kept by the tech giants, social networks, and so on. And in the, let's say, especially in countries, in European countries, in the public institutions concerning social security, but also, of course, in the clinics in the files of your medical doctors, and so on. At the moment, there are about more than 300,000 healthcare apps in the various places where you can find the apps, but there is, as far as I know, zero big public space where you can easily share health data. And so the problem is not that we don't have enough health data. The problem is that we don't have enough health data that we are really sharing. So we have more than enough health data to know which human clinical trials should be start immediately, to know which existing drugs have very probably positive effect, longevity effect, but also negative effect, by the way, and to go for small longevity progress and to prepare breakthroughs. What's the legal situation in most countries, and more important, even the de facto situation in most countries concerning the sharing of health data? Well, actually, you have an obligation to share, but with private companies and public entities, and not for research. So you have the obligation to share if you want to use their services, and the institution will sell, between brackets, because legally it's not sell, but okay, it's the same, your data, or make it available only with many restrictions. So you are not allowed to share most of your data for science. In no country you have really the tools for that. Even if you decide to share your data, scientists will have problem if they use your data. And even if scientists decide to use your data, they will probably not be able to have their finding published because of what's so-called ethical rules or GDPR rules and so on. So what are the possible open solutions? first I want to say that, well, of course, your health data is sensitive, and many people are afraid to share their health data, but actually your health data is less sensitive than your political life, than your sex life, than much of your private life. And it would be, I will come back to this, even less risky if the health system was a public system, a good public system, and if health data were not to be sold. Well, once again, it's not legally sold, it's made available for scientists, but with payment, so that's the same than to be sold. We should, I think, constantly remind that most people are willing to share their health data for scientific and medical goals, and that GDPR is there or should be there, but not above other human fundamental rights. It has to be compatible, so like the right to share scientific knowledge. In theory, the best place to share health data would be a place like the World, well, would be the World Health Organization, but the World Health Organization doesn't have at the moment this goal. So the best place at the moment is certainly the European Union. And well, like Marianne was and Hans were already approaching, for me, it is the best place, and it is really going in the good direction. So the proposal for a regulation concerning the health data space was, let's say, the first text was in May 2022. Just a few more, 2 months ago, there was a vote in the European Parliament. With,
Nu tev viens poģīts, man vesel.
Hello, can you? Okay, so there was a vote in the European Parliament a bit more than 2 months ago in favor of the text. Well, actually, there are three adopted texts who are not the same. One text at the level of the Commission, one text at the level of the Council, and one text at the level of the European Parliament. And now there is what's called the trilogue. So let's say negotiations between the three levels, and read that there is already a kind of almost official agreement. So for me, there are 4 very positive principles in this European health data space. So the interconnectivity, of course, the fact that it can be shared with scientists, of course, and also that there is no possible use for commercial goals, and this concept that they call altruist databases, so that the data would be in places organized by organizations or by institutions who have no commercial goal. So this was the result, just for information, of the vote in the European Union. So you can see that there was a very large majority in favor. The big difference between the Commission, the Council, and the European Parliament is about the questions related to what's called sometimes opt-in, opt-out, or no possibility to opt to refuse for the data for the citizens to be shared. So in very short, some states and some organizations consider that when you use data for scientific research now, after anonymization of pseudonymization, you could use without any authorization of the citizens. Some organizations consider you must have the possibility to say, no, you don't use my data as a citizen. And some organizations consider that you even have to say, yes, I give the authorization. Okay, we should use artificial intelligence, and maybe one day artificial general intelligence for healthy longevity. Also, not only because it's useful, but because using artificial intelligence as a goal, general health can make it less dangerous. but you have to know, of course, that AI today is still extraordinarily stupid, and so then it can be dangerous in some areas. I will not speak about this longer because Anton was already approaching and longer than what I could say. That we could use ChatGPT-like tools, and once again, Anton and the people working with him are working on this. Okay, and now a few more thoughts. One. So I say it again, 30%, no. The problem is not to have big data, but to share big data. It's supposed to be that about 30% of all data in the world is data concerning health. So it's a very, very big part. So we need to better share it. And of course, that's not easy. We need also to better curate it. One second thought is, and somebody was telling that also this morning there was in Paris a very interesting conference about sharing of health data, for medical use. It is possible to use artificial intelligence to find the information, and when you can use artificial intelligence to find the information, but actually nobody is seeing it really except this program. So it's maybe it could be very interesting for people who are afraid of sharing the health data. Okay. And yes, this I said already. No, maybe not. When you ask people if they want to share, not money, to share data, health data with companies for profit, they often refuse. When you ask people if they want to share their data for scientific research, they very largely agree. So I think that, like I said it already, if data were not to be sold, if it was considered a common good, we could have less problem of security, and people would be less afraid to share. We could imagine a system who is more, let's say, patent left. No patent should, in my opinion, at least be a general principle, at least for work made with public money, to facilitate sharing of data, but also to facilitate publication of negative results and to facilitate research outside of patentable fields. So I come already to the conclusion to say what we need is reliable, curated, shared big health data, fast clinical test, but that's not in the scope today, more research, of course, a sense of urgency concerning all those questions. And for example, that's why I was asking, and Hans was asking also questions about how long do we have to wait when we are asking to make scientific research, thanks to available data and use of artificial intelligence. Thank you. No, sorry. And the last thing, what you can do is share your, but it's not your if it's considered a common goal. Share the health big data that you, let's say, handle now and support the sharing of health data. And these are this is more information about the organization who are working in the directions that I was trying to describe. And you can subscribe to the newsletter, The Dead of Death, and you can write to me. And that's it for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Didier. Anyone have a question at this point? No? Then I wish to ask, is here our next speaker, Agbolade?
I think that Akbarad has a connection problem, so is
Okay.
not available now.
All right. So then we go to the next
Oh.
speaker.
Maybe,
yeah.
maybe Martin, we will make a pause of just 5 minutes.
All right.
I would say exactly until 7 minutes, but not more. So we can stop West
All right.
just 1 second, and yeah, and maybe after the 7 minutes we can have also a tour of questions possible if somebody wants to ask a question to George, Anton, or to me after the thinking and drinking for 7 minutes. Yeah.
All right. Then see everyone in 7 minutes. All right. Should we start in a few seconds? So we will continue with our next speaker. Is Jakir here? Yes, I can see. All right. So can anyone hear me? Can you, Didier, can you?
Yes, it's okay.
All right.
I can hear you.
Super. Then I will present Jakir, and after my presentation, he can start. So Jakir Masood is
hello.
digital. Hello.
Yes.
He's digital health expert and health informatician. He has been working as academician, researcher, and consultant in the field of public health and digital health since 2005. He is the chairman of the Public Health Informatics Foundation. Thank you and welcome to the stage, Jakir.
Thank you, Martin, for introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Jakir from Bangladesh. Now I'm presenting my presentation. Can you see?
Yes,
Thank you.
but not full screen yet.
Yeah. I'm doing that. Now it's okay, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I will talk about the situation outside of Europe, USA, better or worse sharing. So the content of my presentation is data sharing and why it is important. What are the major concerns about data sharing? Data sharing practice depends on different factors. Data sharing example from different countries and lesson from data sharing initiatives, lessons learned through data collaboration in Asia, action plan for governments, mechanism for data sharing in real world setting, and finally, how AI can help in data sharing. So data sharing refers to the practice of making data available to others, whether it's individual, organization, systems, for various purposes, such as analysis, collaboration, research, or decision-making. Usually, it involves providing access to datasets, information, or resources, either involuntary or through agreement or arrangements. Data sharing and its importance. It's important because of advancing research and innovation. It improves the decision-making process, enhance the efficiency and effectiveness. It fosters transparency and accountability. It empowers individuals, address the societal challenges. It also supports public goods, encouraging the collaboration and openness and driving economic growth. What are the major concerns of data sharing? It's privacy. Privacy is very important for data because it's individual data, and security, data misuse. And if we share the data, it may have the lack of control, issue of the ethical concern of individual, legal and regulatory compliance, data quality and integrity, re-identification risk, because if we re-identify the data, how can we get the appropriate outcome or result, or how can we match with the real data? And another one is impact on innovation. So data sharing practice outside of the European Union and United States, the situation regarding data sharing can vary widely from country to country and region to region. It is challenging to make a blanket statement about whether data sharing practices are better or worse compared to EU and US, because it depends on various factors such as regulatory environment, because some countries may have robust data protection laws similar to GDPR or CCPA, while others may have less comprehensive or less strictly enforced regulations. Another one is cultural norms. Cultural attitude towards privacy and data sharing can significantly influence practices. Another issue is technological infrastructure. The level of the technological development and infrastructure can impact on data sharing practice from country to country. Another one is enforcement mechanism. the effectiveness of regulatory enforcement mechanism also plays a crucial role in data sharing. The last one is the cross-border consideration. Data sharing often involves cross-border transfer, which can introduce additional complexities and challenges, particularly in regions where there are disparities in data protection laws and enforcement mechanism between countries. So we can see some example from Asian region like China. China has stringent data localization laws requiring companies to store certain types of data within the country's border. The cybersecurity law of China mandates data localization for critical information infrastructure operators and imposes restriction on cross-border data transfers. In Japan, they have the Act on Protection of Personal Information, APPI. And in Korea, they have the Personal Information Protection Act, PIPA, in South Korea. These countries have data protection laws similar to those in Europe and USA, but with some differences in scope and enforcement. They generally require consent for data processing and impose restriction on cross-border data transfers. In India, India's Digital Personal Data Protection DP Act passed in August 2023, just last year, which is expected to regulate the processing and sharing of personal data. The bill is inspired by the GDPR and aims to strengthen the data protection standards in the country. In Latin America, Brazil, they have the Brazil's General Data Protection Law, LGPD, regulates the processing of personal data and imposes restriction on cross-border data transfer that is similar to the GDPR. In Mexico, Mexico has the protection laws in place, such as federal law on protection of personal data held by private parties. These laws regulate the processing and sharing of personal data and require consent of data transfers. In Africa, South Africa's Protection of Personal Information Act aims to regulate the processing of personal information and protect individuals' privacy rights. The law imposes restriction on cross-border data transfers and requires the data controls to implement appropriate security measures. In Middle East, United Arab Emirates has enacted data protection laws, the Dubai International Financial Center Data Protection Law, and the Abu Dhabi Global Market Data Protection Regulation. These laws regulate the processing and sharing of personal data within their respective jurisdictions. In Bangladesh, data protection laws, Bangladesh does not have comprehensive data protection legislation similar to the GDPR or LGPD. However, the country has recognized the need for data protection and privacy regulation. That's why they proposed the Data Protection Act 2023 and it's under process. So we can see some data sharing initiatives from Australia, Singapore, Philippines, India, and the regional level like ASEAN countries. So they are trying to sharing their data in regional levels also. Lesson learned through data collaboration in Asia. Data has greatest potential for impact when it is shared for the purpose of collaboration with a focus on its usability. Governments have more impact through data sharing initiatives when there is a collaboration with the private sector, and private sector data can help generate policy insights for governments. There is a lack of trust can undermine data sharing initiatives, but this can be overcome by addressing commercial sensitivities and through efforts to protect privacy and security. Another issue is interoperability and usability are supported by the use of data agreements and technical standards. Government can lead by example in how they share data. Government can strengthen the enabling environment for data collaboration through domestic policy and regulation, as well as cross-border cooperation. So there is the action plan for the governments play a leading role through sharing government data for the purpose of collaboration with a focus on usability. That's the main issue, is usability. And then seek opportunities for further collaboration with private sector and other stakeholders. Promote practical, innovative approaches that safeguard privacy while facilitating data sharing. Maintain and strengthen cybersecurity through secure data collaboration. Then promote interoperability and usability through standard agreements and frameworks. It ensures that domestic regulations do not create unnecessary barriers to data sharing and are relevant for the current context by being principles-based and technology neutral. Implement domestic strategies that promote data sharing, then encourage the trusted international flow of data through regional collaboration through groups to create consistent legal and regulatory frameworks for data sharing across countries. And then finally, foster data skills in workforce so that more organizations can benefit from data sharing. So we can see the mechanism for data sharing in real world settings. We need a data governance framework, then clear legal and ethical guidelines for data sharing, data privacy and security, how we can make the privacy and security of the data because of it is individual data. It may be the longevity data, health data, so it is more sensitive. Then user-centric design. We have to think about how can we get that data from user-centric individual data. Then selective data sharing controls. And we should have the data standardization and interoperability. Otherwise, we cannot share our data. And we cannot get the actual information. And another issue is incentive and rewards. If we make this policy in incentive and rewards, then it would be more useful for data sharing mechanism. Another mechanism is transparency and accountability mechanism. We should be transparent in our data and we should be accountable also. And then finally, community engagement and stakeholder collaboration. So now we are talking about how artificial intelligence, AI, can help in data sharing. It's very important because secure data infrastructure development is very much needed for this. And then privacy preserving techniques. We need to know how can we preserve the privacy of the data of the individual. And we can use the blockchain for data traceability and AI-powered data governance. We can use the smart contract-based data sharing agreement that can lead all regulation. And then data federation and integration. How can we use this integration of the data? And AI-driven data access control, it should be maintained by AI legally, and then ethical AI governance framework. That means our government should use this ethical AI, that what data should be shared, how can we share, is legal or not legal. And then continuous monitoring and auditing, how AI can work well or not. So after repetitive work, we can get the fruitful AI data sharing outcome. So thank you everyone for your patient sharing. If you have any question, you may ask or you can email me. Thank you everyone.
Thank you very much, Ekir. Anyone has a question at the moment? Yes, Didier, please.
Yes, if nobody else has a question, then thank you for this. From what you studied at the moment, where is that, in your opinion, the best, let's say, country in the world to have access to health data coming from citizens? Is there a country or region where it is, let's say, easier than in Europe? And also, but this is even a more complicated question, but still I'm asking, do you have an idea how it is working at the moment in China? Because on one side they have quite severe laws concerning privacy, but on the other side you have a political system where the state is deciding many things.
Yeah, it's very complicated because every country has their own law. So data sharing is very sensitive because of the private and confidential information in the data set, especially in the longevity data, in the healthcare data. So we cannot say that which country is doing better in this data sharing, but most of the country is now thinking about that. It's very important to share our data, then we can use this AI and get the good result for our system.
Thank you. And about China,
Thank
do you have an idea? No, it's okay.
All right, Walter. Also, Walter has a question.
Yes, you mentioned several times that countries impose restrictions on data transfers across borders, but is it really necessary to do that? Can you not query databases in situ? So you just leave the data wherever they are, and the algorithm analyzes the data wherever they are, and then you don't need any cross-border data transfer. Is that a possible solution?
Yeah, it may be a possible solution, but it should be followed by the government for the country.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Now I wish to excuse Agbulade Omowole because he has a connection problem. So we will try to make his intervention available to the website on the website after this meeting. And now I wish to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Isabella de Zeiger. She's a physician and computer scientist with 30 years of experience in healthcare informatics, and more precisely on semantic interoperability, data standards, and big data. She works as an independent consultant, as senior advisor health and vice chair of SC from the My Data organization, and as clinical coordinator of Horizon project called AIDAVA. Okay, thank you very much. And now the floor is yours.
I don't see. Yeah, sorry.
Can you, I'm going to share my screen.
All right.
Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it. It's not on the slides, but we can see the whole browser.
Can you see it?
Yes, now we can see the slides.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. And just need to apologize because I joined only at 6:30 because I was in the middle of a conversation with my colleagues at My Data about this very topic. So, and we just decided to change the title of all the effort from patient-centric digital health ecosystem into a human-centric digital health ecosystem, because we believe that we want to take it that bigger than patient, and we need to start that with even healthy citizen. And the idea is to integrate all the information we have from social determinant of care, GP data, clinical care data, research data, into a health record, which is something that we believe is at the core of a human-centric health ecosystem that will benefit not just the citizen, but also, as I will try to show you, the different research and big data community you were mentioning before. So what I would like to do is to introduce first what is My Data as an organization, what we're doing, then our view of the HGS regulation as part of the comment we provided to the European Commission, and what we suggested at that point in time, which is very much patient-centric, human-centric management of data. And then we're currently working on, as an international group, to really come with a solution that would be a patient-centric EHDS, but not just EHDS. We are working with people from the UK and the US and also from Asia to see how we can actually extend the concept to a much broader community. And then I will just come with one conclusion. So what is My Data? My Data is a vision. It started with a vision, but it moved on into a movement. And the core idea is that individuals should have agency and control of the data about themselves. And it's not just about health. It's about smart cities. It's about mobility. It's about also finance. It can be about everything. And I'm coordinating the health strategy for my data at this point in time. So we have a supporting community, about 100 plus business and organization with 400 formal members, and we have about 3,000 people truly active as volunteer in the organization. It's all volunteer, by the way, to actually contribute because they believe into the vision. And we are working with different hubs across 6 continents. And it's not just about having concept in mind. We are also working about putting a concrete solution, technical solution, where citizens can truly have agency and control about their own data. We're also then, based on those infrastructure and solution, try to identify what would be the best business model, what would be the best reference architecture, and what needs to happen to actually make sure that this infrastructure support truly what you were discussing just before, which is data sharing by and for the citizen. The whole movement is based on the standards. The first and the foremost most important is the My Data Declaration, and I'll show to you some of the basic principle. What we also started to do is to certify and provide awards to organizations that are considered as being following the model of My Data to support personal data sharing. Again, not just health, but any data which are of personal nature. And we're working on a white paper in many different areas and support for think tank. And the one I'm currently working and I'm going to present to you, which it's about health, and it's done with the whole team, not just with me, obviously. So what are the My Data principle? First and foremost is what I think a few of you requested, is there anybody working on this? And yes, it's really My Data. We want human-centric control of personal data. Yes, it's a lot in Europe, but it's not just in Europe. There are quite a few people working, including in health, across different continents. So first, human-centric control of personal data. The second concept is that anything that is related to not just health, but anything which is related to the life of a human, the individual should be at the point of integrating the data. And I'll show you exactly what that means in terms of healthcare. The third point is all beautiful and nice to say we want to have data sharing and make sure it's happening. If we don't empower the individual with the right type of technology, it's not going to happen. And that's why individual empowerment is absolutely key to make sure that the human can actually be in control of the data. Fourth principle, we need to make sure that we have true portability. In Europe, we have that wonderful GDPR with the portability. Well, if you actually look at what is happening in reality, try to actually get access to your health data, you'll get a bunch of PDF which are completely unreadable, while your data are much better than that. We also want to make sure that as a key principle, there is transparency across different stakeholders and accountability. And the final one, obviously, there is no value in sharing heterogeneous and low quality data. Very important to ensure interoperability. So those are really the core principles that are guiding the organization, where health or other sector will really try to apply those principles and make sure that they can support. So it was really, in a nutshell, what My Data is all about. No. What was our view on the HDS regulation? I think, as it was mentioned before, you know the date. So there was that draft regulation in May 2022. There was a period for public comment to which we submit our My Data comment in July. We had the opportunity as well to discuss with the European Parliament, more specifically with the LIBE Committee, to actually explain the value of opt-out and how easy it could be. You mentioned that before, opt-out, opt-in, absolutely. Very important, because you will see that certainly for the HDS, permit is going too far. But so we had, with many other people, obviously, the possibility to discuss on that. No, I think as mentioned as well before, November 23, the Labour European Parliament provided a comment. By December, the Council provided a comment to the HDS, and no, indeed, they brought all that together into that big trilogue document. And what I understand from people at the Commission and different contact with there is that there is a definitive political will to have a final version of the HGS in 2024. Some people hope Q2, but that will need a lot of consensus across the different groups, the Commission, the Committee, the European Parliament, and the Council. But hopefully there is a political will to get there. No, all reading of the regulation for my data, and obviously to provide to you what is in the regulation from a citizen perspective when you have 145 pages. It's not easy, but I'll try to summarize that in a few slides. So chapter 2 is about primary use of electronic data and what is going to happen there. So let me try to put that in a graphic. So when we speak about data, at least the EHDS, it's about obviously all the data that are in the hands of clinical data holders, so hospital, GP, but there's also the social determinant of health, which are not directly from the healthcare stakeholders, but are outside, like environment, social, economical factor, which are quite important. The other part that was fortunately added by the European Parliament is to make sure that everything that is related to clinical research, data holder, pharma company, but also government or hospital would also be included into the data that should be shared as part of the HDS. No, then what the HDS is saying is that we should put in, well, the authorities across the different member states should put in place what they call National Contact Center for Digital Health. And there can be several ones per region. Those ones should be certified, consolidated at the national level through those member state digital health authorities. And digital authority will actually support cross-border request and access across the different member states. Interesting thing is that some of this infrastructure exists already. You may have heard about any friends with my Mon Dossier Ma Santé. Estonia is another very good example where there's already a lot of activity there. So it's not that it's going from nowhere, but it's obviously not perfect because from a citizen perspective, EHDS is also saying that as a citizen, I have the right to access my data. I have the right to have a copy. My physician also has the right to access, and I can also request transfer, but that's it. I'm passive. And if, for example, there are mistakes in my medical records, then too bad for me. They stay there. There is nothing I can do. I cannot increase the quality. I cannot add my data like telemedicine or my different device. So it's okay, but it's very passive. So definitively not enough. Then let's move on to there's a big chapter about the HR system and quality and what it should be. Very interesting, but maybe less interesting from a citizen perspective. And then let's look more at the chapter 4, which is the secondary use of electronic health data, which starts to be interesting from a citizen perspective. So you see what's in healthcare delivery. No, let's look at healthcare research analytics. So there, what the HGS is saying that we are going, well, the member states are expected to set up what is called Health Data Access Body. And if you see the acronym HDAB, that's basically what it is, Health Data Access Body. And they should be coordinated at the national level by that coordinated Health Data Access Body. When a data user, which would be for typically public sector, but it could be also pharma company or research organization who are private, but who do have a purpose to have access to the data, which is part of the regulation, like a pandemic or something of public interest. So the data user would request data to one of those HDAB, and those HDAB would have the permit to actually get those data. The permit, and then, well, those different organizations then would coordinate across EU through that infrastructure called Health Data at EU. And there's a lot of effort right now done in Europe through that project called HDS2, led by France, to actually pilot all that infrastructure behind. Big problem, as a citizen, I have access to a public website where I can find information about what's happening about my data, and hopefully I will understand. The HDS originally did not mention anything about opt-out. The Parliament did request that. Hopefully that is going to happen, even though there's a lot of discussion from the authorities saying it's going to be too complicated, it's going to be too individualistic. So that's certainly something that is still in the discussion. No, that's what is proposed in the regulation. Again, it's a high-level summary of something much more detailed. Oh, yes, I forgot to mention the one thing that the HDS is also mentioning, which is interesting for the citizen, and that's why the authorities say, but as a citizen, you should be more than happy because you are going to have a lot of benefits, because you are going to be able to bring with you in your mobile or your smartphone, you will have basic information, which they call the 6 priority categories of personal electronic health data, which is international person summary, discharge summary, lab report. So as a citizen, you should have more than enough to be happy. Well, yes, that's definitively HDS has a lot of good things. And the main thing is that it exists. And I think there's a fantastic movement there. The question is that the only good model, most efficient for the citizen? And that's where, as my data, we think that it's not. There are other ways to implement the HDS and the regulation as it is. Well, maybe something I should say. EHDS is a regulation. By definition, leaves a lot of place for interpretation. And behind a regulation, you always have implementing or delegating acts. In the HDS, there are 72 implementing acts, which means that there's still a lot of room to implement what is the in the mindset of the authorities, but to implement that in different ways, including in the way we believe it should be done at MyData. So what do we believe should be done? The first thing is that it is critical to integrate all citizen data into one single longitudinal record. It's really the human, the patient should be at the center where we have high quality data so that the authority can have also high quality data. And so everything that should go coming from healthcare delivery or social care or health research, clinical trial, that should first and foremost be integrated into that personal longitudinal health record, from which it is possible then to derive much higher quality population data set, or also then data for the citizen for its own use. So that's the first component to make sure that we have everything with the human at the center. The second thing, it's so beautiful to have that, but if we don't provide agency to the patients so that they can control their data, it's not going to work. So it's extremely important that we can make sure that the citizen is responsible. And we really believe that it's critical to move away from data altruism, who is at the end of the day not benefited nor the patient, maybe benefit the authority, but just on the short term because data quality is not there. And that's where we also believe we need to provide what we call data intermediary services. You may have heard about the Data Governance Act, which is two things, data altruism and data intermediation. And we really believe that data altruism is not the right way because it's citizen gives away their data and that's it. Well, in data intermediary services, the citizen can actually control. And so that's what we propose. You can see that At the end, still those authorities, we still need to support secondary use, but it's done and central by what we call public or private health data intermediaries, which are a trusted contact point for the citizen, and the citizen would actually be able to control, improve their data, and could also consent to share or not to share. And I'll come to do that in more detail in a few minutes. In that case, we could have, again, public requests, absolutely, they are needed, but we could also have potentially data algorithm organization, why not? But also private user, pharma company, other private hospital or foundation who could also actually issue private requests. There is no reason why the request should only be for public organization or public purpose. They could be private if we want to do research in the context of illness, once also from longevity. The patient, and it would be different mechanisms I'll show to you, would actually be able to agree to consent to share or not. So that's what we said to the European Commission about a year or 2 years ago. No, obviously, the HDS is still moving forward, but one of the things I really want to make clear, today, if you look at the HDS, they would say, yes, we are doing that also for the benefit of the citizen. Well, no, because EHDS is population-centric. The benefit is not at the level of the individual. It benefits the population and the public health authority and improve research and policy making. And it supports standardization in transfer of personal data, but still it's standardized and it's for everybody. There is no benefit in HDS for me as an individual. Research can be better, but there's no value in HDS for personalized medicine. And that's exactly where we say it should benefit people as individual, not just as a population. So we have decided about 3 months ago to based on what's happening in Europe and different research projects, to say, no, it's time to actually come with something much more concrete, to develop the vision that you have, well, the comments that you have seen before into something more concrete. So I'm not going to tell you that we have everything. On the contrary, I just want to go back to what we are working on right now. So we are, and quickly I'll go through redefining the problem statement. The vision we have about bringing all that together. And so we, based on that, will work with a concrete solution based on what we already see across sector in mobility for smart cities, but apply that for healthcare. And it's very much based on the My Data Operator framework and on EU Digital Wallet, which is now used in finance and in travel. And based on that, we want to work with some pilot proposal, taking into account not just infrastructure, but also ethical aspect, financial model, and all those different components. So quickly, what is the problem? What is the solution? I think the problem, we kind of all agree, I think it was mentioned before, that we have all our data in many different databases in format. So I have a piece of my head there, a piece of my body, then I have here my arms and my legs. Nobody knows that those are all combined would give a good idea of me, but they are all over the place. When the authority, and in different format, when the authority want to actually do some research, they get an extract of all those ones in a pseudonymized way. So they are not supposed to link, which means that you get big databases, standardized, but where there is no linked view of patient, and you can have a lot of difference, which decrease the quality of the data. On top of that, the same data can be created many times to be able to get those different big data for training AI model. So it works, but it's hard, it's costly, painful, and does not bring any benefit for the patient. So the whole idea is to say, okay, well, why don't we actually first concentrate everything first at the individual level? So everything, so my head is brought together with my body, with my legs and my arms. So, and I have my full record. which is also clean into a standard structure, which is a personal knowledge graph, but it's semantically consistent and interoperable and reusable, fair in its all sense. Out of that, it's possible then to generate just in time, based on the question, the different type of database that are needed to do further research or public health, including as well data for me in my wallet if I need to. So what does that mean then to actually come to that vision in terms of the infrastructure behind? So obviously the citizen is at the core, and we have all those different data holders, and the citizen will decide about what we call a health data intermediary, which is to me the equivalent of a bank for my cash. But for my data, I would have a data intermediary. For my cash, I have a bank. But it would function in the same way. I could pick and choose. I would trust that data intermediary, and they would manage the data for me. But I would still have a tool to control, improve, but also to share. And obviously, that would need to be certified by a digital authority. And very important, I would have a set of virtual assistants to help me to get my data from there, to help me to clean my data, and to help me to share. And there are quite a few projects working on this, and I'm coordinating one of those projects on data curation, which is a pain, a real pain, but it's critical. And in terms of sharing, the citizen could say, if it's my provider, it's always, don't even ask me. I could potentially decide not to. If it's for the public sector, for the common good, also please go ahead. But I have the possibility to opt out. If it's for private research, please come and ask me first. And if it's for commercial use, it's never. And by the way, doing this, the opt-out, opt-in, and could ask, it's very easy. There are applications that exist where it's swipe on, and so not the problem. Big question is there any case like public health emergency, like COVID, where no matter what, my data would be shared with the public sector? Obviously, I would be informed by my data intermediary, but I would know. And I think that's definitely something that is worth discussion. Is there other cases where I must share my data because the value for the community is more important than for me? So we are in the middle of writing and putting all that in place. So we are currently working with our international team to put that in a white paper and make sure that out of that we can actually start to communicate further, and also potentially to have a possibility to do some piloting. So it's a big word. I was reading some of the chat comment that, oh, we need to have something in 6 months, is too long. Well, I'm afraid that if we want to come with such a paradigm, which is going to change completely the way we are managing data in healthcare, it's not a 6 months challenge. It's more 5 years, 6 years, 10 years challenge if we get there. But at the same time, we have to work on it, even though it can be long. Otherwise, in 10 years, we'll still be nowhere. So conclusion, I think it's not just about authorities versus data holder versus citizen. We are all in the same boat. So an EU citizen and authorities should co-create for the common good in health. And for that, we need to maximize the quality first at the data of the individuals, so that when they are basically shared, they increase the common good. So we need to make sure that the quality of all data are first good at the individual's level, and then we also need to come with mechanism and tools to actually share them in full trust and in value for all the different stakeholders. So obviously there's a lot to be done. If you're interested, sorry for that publicity, but that's what I'm asked to do. Please have a look at the paper, the case, and certainly if you're interested, then you're more than welcome to join us. I think it's a vibrant, very motivated community, because we really believe that's the right way to do. So with this, please don't hesitate to ask questions.
Thank you very much, Isabel. Anyone has question at the moment? Okay, no. Then we go to the next speaker, Hans Constant. He's the founder of startups Faqir Foundation, Faqir Institute, and Medex Health. Furthermore, he's a dedicated advisor and mentor in health enabled by digital technologies. Passionate about fair data, linked data, startups, scale-ups, open innovation, and entrepreneurship, he actively promotes innovation and growth in the healthcare sector. Thank you very much, Hans. The floor is yours.
Okay, can you see my slides?
Yes, at the moment, everything, the slides and the...
Yeah, but that's fine because I'm not going because I have a huge screen and then it might mess up. So let's keep it like this.
All right.
So first of all, thank you for the invitation. And also I listened to the previous talks, started pretty technical. Then it was good to see the update from Health Data Hub France. And then Isabella, I know you're also on a mission to help patients with smarter data. So it's always good to see the talk, right? And you're right, it will take 5, 10, maybe 15 years to get there. But, you know, just not being able in 6 months to answer and to a question with data, not having the data is kind of still, I don't understand in these days where we see what can with Netflix and others and we're in health are so slow. But anyhow, I'm not going to rant. I'm going to give a talk here. First of all, disclaimer. So yes, thanks for the introduction, Martin. So most and for more, I'm an entrepreneur. I do what I do because I believe in helping patients with data, and I've done this already multiple times, and this gives me goosebumps, gives me energy, and that's why I'm so motivated. So helping patients with data is the first thing. And as an entrepreneur, you know, you can do fantastic things, run after grants and get money, but ultimately, I also want to make it economically viable. So that means there must be a business model somewhere following. You must make enough impact and create enough value that there's willingness to pay. And it's kind of the economics aspect and the other aspect that's important. Now, longevity, I'm far from an expert, so I cannot talk about that. I'm also not an expert, and the disclaimer is that I also worked for the government. So I was a program manager for setting up the Health Data Agency last year and the year before. But I gave it up because of some frustrations, and also I want to stay close to the patients, so I started my own startups. Now, talking about AI, machine learning, deep learning, all that's fantastic, right? If you use ChatGPT, you know, there's fantastic things you can do, and this is just ChatGPT. But my problem is in health that, you know, is it putting the horse behind the cart, right? And this is where I will plead here for fair data and start with the data first. And so, you know, AI is in there if I have animations, but my point is AI is maybe as heavily overhyped as big data was some years ago. And I think there's a lot of challenges in the data that's there, getting access to it, being able to use it. So I'll talk in between the examples that I will give about fair data. And fair data stands for making data findable. Once you know what the data is and it's findable, accessible. How can I get access? It's being mentioned in many of the talks. Can I get access as a scientist? Do you have what's the health data access? Do I need a permit? And so on. And then when you know where the data is and you have access, is interoperability. Is you get the data, but hopefully it's not 1,000 PDFs in a Dutch version that I cannot read. So please make it interoperable. And OMOP was mentioned, SNOMED and others. And ultimately, FAIR stands for making data reusability, which means that data can be used beyond the original purpose it was created for. And I'll give some examples in my talk as we go through this. Now, Didier, I apologize I couldn't come in the previous meeting to kind of prepare, but you asked me to talk a little bit what's happening in Europe. We've already heard a lot, so I probably can skip these slides. But then also what's happening in Belgium. So being having the privilege to be the program manager for the Health Data Agency for 1.5 years, 2 years, I can share some insights there. And then it was mentioned in the slide of Isabel Solid, which is a new technology. And I'll explain a little bit that because in Flanders, they're heavily kind of making a bet on it. And it's kind of interesting to see where it is. And then ultimately, and Isabel, was great to hear what you were saying. I will go into what I'm doing now. And I set up a nonprofit, my own Fakir Foundation. And Fakir stands for Fair with Equality in the Center, but also a Fakir who's then on the data. So that's why we came to the name, just for your information, a little bit marketing and some BS, and then we came up with the name. But Fakir is really about how can you make data fair, how can you enable the quality, and how can you make it findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And this indeed is done with, I'm a tech geek because my background is molecular biology, medicine, but also data science. But I love tech because I'm already 20 years in the semantic web, and I think we can do fantastic things with knowledge graphs. So hopefully I can explain a little bit of that. Now, coming back to European health data spaces, first thing is I just used some pictures here, and I have the link to the document with this. But the point is that, first of all, it is about primary and secondary use of data, of health data. Now, primary use, we all know this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with it, but it's like me now as a patient. I need help. What can you help me as a physician, a tool, an app, whatever. And then once I'm helped, then, okay, can my data help the next Hans Constant who's sick? I know about people who the first diagnosis was the wrong one. They were 2 months in the hospital. The second diagnosis was not really the one, 4 months in the hospital. And then the last diagnosis and therapy was the right one. And the person was 3 days after that out of the hospital. So can we reuse that data for the next people so that they only have to go 3 days in the hospital? And can we calculate the impact? So secondary use is kind of reusing. It's the art of fair reusing data so that scientists can use it. And it's rightly said in the Scandinavian countries, indeed, it's mostly scientific questions. It's not like people asking questions. But I think this is changing, right? So this is one thing. Now, the problems were mentioned. As an individual, good luck on having control. So like last summer, one of my best friends died, and I gave palliative care to her. And she had like 340 PDFs, but it's PDFs, it's not data. So like all the lab tests, all the tests, you have to read the PDFs. Nobody is doing this, right? So the idea is, can we make out of these PDFs data that's international, that you can read and do, so that health professions, same thing, right? If you switch hospitals, good luck on finding the data in another hospital. If as a diabetes patient you want to connect to Strava, well, it's not so easy, right? Apple Health, you need an app to extract the data of sleeping patterns and stuff like that. So it's very difficult also for physicians to have all the data. Providers even tougher, research even tougher, and policymakers even tougher. So there's a lot of data, but we seem not to be able to access it. And once we have it, we still need a lot of time to make sense out of it. This is indeed why Health Data Hub France, but also Belgium, is working on this data catalog. Can we agree on the common data models? Can we agree on the nomenclature? And can we then make it shareable? There was also a little bit talked about rare diseases. If there's only 2 patients in Belgium, you cannot provide data anonymization. So you need Europe, you need more patients. So how are you going to get to them? How are you going to get to the data? Now, the objectives of the European health data space is clear, right? Is indeed put, and this is different. I also like what Jakur was saying. I took some screenshots there because, I make a little persiflage out of it. I said, in China, you don't have privacy, you don't know the data, the governments own it. If you go to the US, there's privacy, but the tech companies own the data. And I think in Europe, really, there's a difference. We want to empower the people, the person, the individual to own the data. So that's empowering the individual is key. And with that, we hope that there's more trust in the system, more data will be able to flow, and you can unleash the power of the health data economy. You can make data flow in trusted envelopes. And by that, you can really do more research and innovation. So this is kind of all what's in here. And you see interoperability, you see access, you see empowerment of the patient. Now, we also need to talk about the benefits and measure them. So what's in it for you? High level, it's better diagnosis and treatment. It's affordable health. It's access to health. So these are the things you want to do. So these questions of 6 months or 18 months, can we make it faster? Can we learn from it? Can we help researchers, also industry and pharma, to make the new therapies, bring them faster to market? Have better health policies. If you have 6 months to wait, why? How are you going to make up your budgets for the next year if you don't know the data? So there's so much we can do here. So this is high level the European Health Data Space, and now going to switch to the Health Data Agency. So the Health Data Agency started around 2020 before the HDS. So in Belgium, all the stakeholders came together, and I joined it in 2 years ago in November, where we talked to all the stakeholders. So that's the physicians, it's patient advocacy groups, it's pharmacists, but it's also like the governmental organizations to see what data do you have, what data do you need, how are you doing now, and how can we make it better. And so this is where the Health Data Agency came out, and it's a mess, right? You know, if you want to know, for instance, in Belgium, how many diabetes patients are there? Are they male, female? Are they young, elder? What is kind of the main therapy? What is the standard of care? Where do you go? Do you go to the government, who kind of does reimbursement as Social Security, and ask a question about it? What's being paid back most? Well, good luck there in getting the data. It takes time. And if you get the data, it's not so easy to use. So we have Cienzano, RISIV, KSE, which are governmental issues, but next to that is you can go to pharmacists. Typically IMS Health and others have the data about it. You can go to the hospitals, but it is very fragmented. And you can ask patient groups, also fragmented. So the data's in data silos, it's locked up, it's fragmented, and it's by far interoperable. And so you see it here. So what the Health Data Agency in Belgium wants to do is kind of reduce the data complexity, ensure data findability. So make sure that your metadata and your data catalog is there, which means that hopefully in the future we can go to the HDA in Belgium, and then you ask a question, you will know, oh, there I can find the data about diabetes, findability. That's the data catalog. Where is the data? Who owns it? And in the data catalog, we add in metadata to say, how can you get access? So it's easy to get access. And hopefully, and I really mean this, I truly believe that if we do this well, we can give answers in 1 to 2 weeks to this. And if it's urgent, even faster. So you see here, findability, complexity, the reusability, enabling interoperability. So don't send us a bunch of PDF. Don't send us an Excel sheet or CSV sheet that's long with the wrong names. Please clean up your data. Please curate your data. Please make sure that the data access and data standardization there and data quality. The stakeholders for this Health Data Agency in Belgium is kind of, I would say, everyone. But you see it's research, and research could be academic, could be a physician doing research, could be also industry. Industry is as well biotech and pharma, but could also be health industry. Like in the COVID days, I know a lot of entrepreneurs. There was an entrepreneur with super smart people in AI, and he had made a tool in 2 days to look at the lung pictures. Well, he wanted to scale this, but he gave up because he couldn't get to the data. So industry is not just biotech, but it's also all these tech companies. We have great AI companies, I think, also in France, by the way, Mistral, ChatGPT. Can we do better? And I've seen the examples here. So industry, government, of course, and regulators, the healthcare professionals, and ultimately the citizens. But I do agree with what's being said in earlier talks. I don't think citizens will go to the data catalog, to be honest. Maybe some geeks like me and knowledgeable people like Isabel, but not others. Okay. Now, the good news is in Belgium, we started writing the law in 2022. And in 1 year and 11 months, we were able to write the law, get the law approved, and get it voted in Parliament. So it is voted in March, and we have budgeted an entity to set up the Health Data Agency to scale it. The problem is that I'm a very, impatient person, and working for the government didn't match well. So my time was done after some time, and I really like these guys do great things, but I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to be closer to the patient. So that's why I left the HDN doing what I do now. So the mission is clear. It's very aligned with the mission. Is how can we support population management, health data prevention, policymaking by bringing this data together, make it easier accessible, make it fast, make it accessible and reusable. So that's the Health Data Agency. So now I touched about what I said, the Belgian level, the European level, and now SOLID. So SOLID stands for Social Link Data. And Flanders has made a huge bet on it. It's kind of the new version of the internet. If you want to know more, this is in Dutch, I apologize, but you can follow Atumi, atumi.be. And there, they're really spearheading in setting up personal health data vaults and making sure that indeed the citizen, not just the patient, but the citizen is in control of their data. Now, is SOLID this magic? What is SOLID? I think there's still a lot to learn. The good news is I've been in it now for 2 years, 2.5 years, and I'm already like 10 years in knowledge graphs and 20 years in linked data. Now, to explain Solid very quickly is if you have a picture and you post it on LinkedIn, on Facebook or Instagram, you have to copy your picture 3 times. You have 4 copies of your picture. If you say to Facebook, remove my picture, well, it's not showing in your profile, but they still keep it. So they still keep it for the marketing. It's not hard deleted. So what I'm saying is you copy your data over, you don't know where it is, and you have an applications or vendor lock-in because you cannot get it out. Ask LinkedIn to give you in a structured way your CV and your resume. It's not possible, and they have the data. And the future with Solid is really to restore the choice by separating data from applications. And that's a crucial message I want to say here. The idea is not to say, I post my picture in all of these applications, but I say, no, this is my picture. And Facebook, you have access, Instagram, you have access, and LinkedIn, you have access. But when I don't like Instagram, you revoke access. And this is in line with starting GDPR legislation, but now DHDS, is that you will be able to say you have the right to be forgotten. But now with DHDS, you will even have the right to give me my data back in a structured way. And so what and why we do this is really this. Separating data from applications will ensure that data can flow in a trusted envelope. Because now we all have challenges in access to data, although it's there. It's in the hospitals. Why can't we get it? It's in this reimbursement database. It's in this, why can't we have it? And so the problem is that you see data is locked up in tech giants, in registries, and that means sometimes it's ethical. They use GDPR and privacy to stop you. There's sometimes the technical ceiling, but there's definitely a ceiling in getting data. So there's a finite data race, and we don't get there to get the data. 18 months, 6 months, crazy. And so we believe that if you apply the Solid technology and you empower the citizens to have the data in a correct way, and there's a lot of awareness to be done, a lot of training and education, but then data can really flow. Because now I have my picture, and we're looking at the informed consent from the rare diseases, but 90% of the people want to share the data if it's done correctly. So imagine that you would have 740 million pods for the 740 million Europeans, and data could be shared from 90%. This would be fantastic. And so this data vault is not, I copy my data in my database. No, it's really a semantic layer that says, I have data in hospital 1, I have data in hospital 2, and now you can all see it, and I can make it linkable, and I can go to another hospital and show it. I'll talk about it later. So this is the cool thing they're doing in Flanders. And then, because I'm so passionate about this and I want to help patients, I started Fakir, as I explained to you, and you see, we want to control all of that data. We want to have that knowledge graph to have all of that data. And we started the foundation, a non-for-profit. We didn't have any grants. We're doing this ourselves with some people because trust is key. People want to know what data do you have, where is it, and how is it used, and is it used correctly? So we have governance with an ethics committee, a legal committee, and a technical committee, because we want your data to empower you, to work for you, and at scale. So this is an example of the patient that I helped, and she died in July, and this was already like 12 years. So first she had, with her physician, she fell asleep, she didn't know her name, she couldn't find the way back with her car. So all kind of incident, the physician said, yeah, you're tired, maybe you're sick, they didn't know it. And then boom, here, she was really urgently in a hospital, local hospital, and they thought she had a brain tumor and she would die. Then they saw it was not a brain tumor, but it was a severe MS seizure, multiple sclerosis. Hospital 3, because in the local hospital, I couldn't help, hospital 3. Then they started a treatment. Then they started another treatment. She had COVID. And there's all kind of tests. And this is a 340 PDFs, and I don't have the data. I have that downloaded, but it's damn difficult to use it. And the physicians don't read all of this. They don't know where to find it. They don't know how to access it and use it. And this is really where we want to change. And how do we do this with Fakir? We have really set up these personal health data vaults. By the way, we go live because I'm an entrepreneur and data scientist. We have our data vault, so we will go live in May. So in May, people will be, and it's for free. You will be able to use it. The first thing is, how do you gather data? I mean, you have data in hospitals, you have data from healthcare professionals, first line, this is second line, sometimes first line. You have your health coaching apps, you have your things at home, smart. So all of this data is somewhere there, but we want to gather your data. And the second thing we want to do is make sure that when you gather all of the data of the apps, that you structure it. This is really where FACCARE is working on.
Hans, if in a few minutes.
Yes, but I'm done in some minutes here. The idea is here that you make the semantic cloud, and in fact, the databases are with a federated analytics enabled so that you really link this cloud of data together. And then ultimately you start to use it. And using means you know where the data is, you find it. I'll show it in this file because then you can see it. So you have a visual about all the things that happened. And when you click on it, you go to the right data source and you get the data, you integrate it, and you get meaning out of it. So the idea what we do here is not just when you're sick, because we call our system healthcare, but it's sick care, but really empower people to clean up the data, to gather, structure, use, share, control, and care the data throughout their lifetimes, throughout their life, because we truly believe that this will make a huge impact. So with this talk, I explained you kind of what's happening. And ultimately, talking about AI, my standpoint is that AI won't replace physicians, but physicians who use AI will replace those who don't, because it is a good enabler. But don't forget data first. We need to clean up the data, make the data accessible and fair so that AI can thrive. So this is very quickly my view on what's happening in Europe, Belgium, Flanders, and at the startup, and then also kind of how my vision is on AI and data. So I believe in data saves lives, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much, Hans. And we have a questions for you. So Didier, please.
Yes, actually, this is a question for Isabelle and for you, Hans, because I think you have close points of view. And yeah, first, I will say where I totally agree with, I think, both of you. It's the fact that at the moment we cannot use our own data. We have to we have to go through institutions, through big tech and so on. So there I totally agree. But don't you think that it should be, I don't know, some people say compulsory once the data is anonymized or pseudonymized, to use it for health research, and that you don't have to agree with that because it's anonymized and pseudonymized. So yeah, I don't know if my question is clear, but yeah, I will maybe reformulate it. Normally in the laws, no, it's already the case that for statistic reasons and also for research reasons, GDPR doesn't apply, in fact, actually. So you don't need kind of an authorization. So isn't it oh la la, sorry, my English.
But then can I
isn't it
I think we get your question already, Didier.
Yeah,
I think Isabelle will answer and I will add. Yes.
So yeah, sorry.
Isabelle, go ahead.
Ladies first, thank you, Hans. I would like to maybe then ask a question then to you. Do you like suboptimal and not enough quality anonymized data? That's basically what you will get. If you don't have, if you have anonymized data, that means they're not linked, which present only partial view of the patients, which is by definition incorrect, and you can have sample which represent 100,000 of a certain patient and then 10,000 of another patient. So you can have biased, and therefore your model and your research will be bad. So the key problem there, it's the low quality. Anonymization is not the issue. It's the quality of the data and the representation of your basically anonymized data sets.
Yeah. I agree with Isabelle, and I think, Didier, to answer part of your question, indeed, so ownership of data is kind of the elephant in the room, right? So who owns the data? So when you go to a hospital and you have a diagnosis, it's in the EPD, and the hospital said, it's my data. I said, no, I paid for it, it's my data. So whose data is this? And I think no physician is telling you you cannot take the data to go to a second opinion. They all give you data, but the problem is, good luck in a hospital asking all the data, not just the PDF, but the data. It's impossible, and that's the low quality, Isabel. There's not high quality data. Secondly, in the law right now, I think, and again, I'm not an expert, disclaimer here, but if you have a question, a scientific question, and you're allowed to make anonymized data, then in fact, with that anonymized data, you can do whatever you want. You can sell it, you can do whatever you want, right? Which is kind of good and bad, but I don't like it. This is why we go into separating data from applications. I think data is the holy, and it's like for the common good and should never be sold. We're not in the Philippines that you sell your data to get money. And not should we do it, nor should hospitals do it, to be honest, right? Because if you go to the hospital, you give an informed consent. Well, who knows they've given an informed consent? Then who has read the informed consent? Question 3 is, who understands the informed consent? And question 4, did any hospital tell you how they used your data and for what purposes? I think it's very silent, okay? So that's part on the ownership. Then I go back exactly what Isabel said. If you have anonymized data, it's like one lump, and you cannot trace back to the individual. You can not follow up longitudinal. So for me, it's kind of a snapshot. It's okay for research, but it's far from good, to be honest. So this is why I believe indeed in these data vaults, because then the data is connected. I also believe that we've seen this with patients now that use a system that they're extremely willing to curate data. And if 18 patients says it's this, then you can be sure if 2 others say, or nobody says it is. So you can use like crowdsourced data curation there with the patient enabled, and patients know a lot about their diseases, don't. So we cut out the patients too much for the data curation. And then I agree. So my dream is that in Europe that we have 740 million of these pots, and it's like PDF, it's for free. You never have to pay for it. It is open, and your data's in there. And then it's the service on top you can sell, but not the data. And that's the nuance I want to bring. And then the idea is that you can indeed say, I have my pot of my data, and I say people can use it, but it's anonymized. So I'm a number, nobody can trace it back to me. But then when I say, yeah, but you know, if J&J or any pharma is making something on a mutation that I have, I want to know it. And then you de-anonymize yourself. And then you can be reached for a clinical trial, and you know it up front. So it's anonymization is a result of pseudonymization, but anonymization on its own, it's not good enough. It's old school. So we really need to be able to longitudinally follow the patients, to trace back to the patients, and to make data linkable, Isabel, because you mentioned it should be linked data. Solid is linked data, don't forget. So I hope I answered your question a little bit with this.
Yeah, if I may just say one sentence more. Well, first, the aspects of anonymization and pseudonymization are for me very complicated, because yeah, I understand what Isabel is saying, and I was speaking to one scientist recently who told me, yes, when you anonymize or when you pseudonymize, actually it's never anymore useful for research. I hope this is exaggerated, but okay. That's the first point. But my where I am afraid with what I understand of your proposals is the fact that you will have a small part of the population, always a small part of the population who will refuse for some reasons to share anything, and then you will have a bias, and you don't know which bias. Voilà.
But there also, Didier, just to be honest, we work with the King Bodwin Foundation, and they've done research, and I've seen, so typically 85 to 95% of the population want to share data when it's done correctly. It's about transparency and trust. And I think these 5-10% outliers, yeah, that's where you need to at least be able to kind of know what the outliers are. It will be biased, but if you have 90%, I think you have very high quality data. It's good enough. There will always be people saying no. It's typically, I would say, lawyers and tech geeks and skepticists.
I think on that,
I agree with your percentage, but for me, 10% of people, you know, it's very difficult. So for weak signals, it's complicated. But okay.
I think that's where first pseudonymization, it's easy. Pseudonymization means you can go back to a patient. Anonymization means you cannot.
Yep.
So it's very, very different. Pseudonymized data, real data. It's not data private. So for me, it's either you can identify or you cannot. And pseudonymization, it's you can go back. No, about your point, I think that's exactly where I'm mentioning in representation. In some case, like public health emergency, like pandemics, which is declared by the WHO, you may consider that those very exceptional circumstances, then you could have access to all the data. But that's, for me, the only question mark I would have around the whole thing about data sharing. In which circumstances and who decides that no common good community is more important than individuals' data privacy? I think that's discussable. And then you have 100%. If you have 100% of good quality data at the individual level.
Mm-hmm. I see Walter also has a question, right, Walter?
Yes, Walter, yeah.
It sort of builds on the previous one. I mean, in many Western European countries, we have health systems and social security systems that are publicly funded. And so is it not reasonable that the people who benefit from these publicly funded systems would in return make their data available by default? So you would, the default assumption would be that people make their data available as a sort of civic duty because they benefit from the publicly funded system, and therefore it is reasonable that you ask something in return for the benefits they receive. And one of the things you ask them is, please share your data. And I don't necessarily share the optimism that Mr. Constant voiced. I recall that in Holland, for instance, there was a proposal to share medical records across hospitals. So, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer, but the Dutch basically did not agree with it, the majority at least, and it was not approved. And so I don't think you can assume that people will always be willing to do it. So therefore my proposal is just give something back as an individual for what you receive from the publicly funded systems. And one of these things is your data for public benefit. I'm not saying for private or commercial purposes. There, I think people should be able to decide.
Yeah.
But the public benefit, I think it should be assumed that that's what you do as a default.
Yeah. But that's the whole idea of having an opt by default, yes, and you have an opt-out. What I don't think is correct is the permit, as the European Commission wanted to have. No, I think the opt-out should remain, except exceptional circumstances. But that's the whole discussion, Walter.
Yeah. And Walter, it's a moral duty to be an optimist, sorry to say so. But anyhow, so I agree, yeah. So of course here it's a talk and I'm enthusiastic, but even if a few people share, the good news I can say is we're working now with some groups, some patient groups, and I must say nearly 100% wants to share data as long as it's correct. The other part of your question is spot on. Yesterday I talked to physicians in the hospital and said, Hans, yeah, you work for the government, but we structure our data in our APDs. Then we need to fill it in, sorry to say so, lame tools from the government. So they have to manually copy paste CSVs and stuff like that. And then the worst part, Walter, is when they put the data in, they don't know what's done, they never get something back. And that's, I think, your point, right? So what we want to do with the foundation is like on a monthly basis, and this is, I think, also what the rare diseases groups are doing, is they say they have this opt-in, opt-out. So you can always opt out again if you want. You can even say, I opt in for all pharma, but not this pharma because I don't trust them. I share my data with all physicians in Belgium, but not this physician. This is what a knowledge graph can do, but it's very difficult in some usual, but this is where I want to go. But at the end of the month, we will say, you know, you opt in or you opt out. And when you opt in to share your data, then everybody can use it, but correctly. So it's pseudonymized data. So we can trace it back, but nobody else can trace it back. And you're a trusted third party and you have to live up to the laws and the rules and the privacy and all of that. But the point there is what we see is we will make a report on a month. X amount of data vaults are used for this by that company for that purpose. And then you already give back. You can say, we made certain research happen. You don't get money for it, but at least it's like donating blood or organs. At least you have the common good. And the third part to the answer is writing the law. I think it was a miss, but I think in Belgium, and I'm a disclaimer here, this is my personal interpretation. It's not the government or whatever. But the point is that I felt a lot of willingness across a lot of partners and across a lot of departments, so not just health, but also others, that they want to put it in a law somehow. But it was, if we would have put it in a law now, it would never been voted because it would be too much discussion. So step by step. So the EHDS is a good step, GDPR is a good step, so we're getting there. And this is indeed the 5 years, 10 years that it will take. But ultimately, Walter, in the law in Belgium, it's like this, that every governmental institute, when they share data, they indeed need to give it back and tell you how others can use the same patterns to use it. I think ultimately the Belgian politicians want to extend that because indeed, like now in Belgium, just to give you an example, there is a system which is called COSO. And COSO is a system in Belgium where, in fact, the hospitals can together post their reports on it. So it's kind of one system. So that's good because when you're in a hospital, you don't have to call the hospital, go to the EPD, you go there and you find the data. The problem, Walter, is, and you can ask Peter or Facon about this, is that this is not in the law, it's not a must. So people use it, but they don't commit. And I agree, Walter, and politicians want to do it, is when you use the data, you sign up for a charter and you also say, I'm also giving my data in the right way. So to answer the last part of the question, yes, I agree. 2 politicians want it, but it will take time to get there.
All right. Thank you very much for answers. Now, Agbolade Mohole has internet connection, so he can present his speech. But for the short introduction. So Agbolade has a background in computer science and ethics of data-driven technologies. He's CEO of Mascot Nigeria Limited and recipient of Breakthrough Longevity Activism Prize by International Longevity Alliance in France 2020. He currently consults on ethics of AI and data science for corporate organizations. Agbolade, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone, I'm very excited to be part of this virtual conference. And so far, I have learned a lot from all the speakers who have spoken on a whole lot of things. And, they have addressed some of the things I want to talk about. And I'm not going to repeat those things. So I'm just going to focus more on the situation in Nigeria. So a little about me. My name is Agbolade Omowole. I'm a Nigerian based in Nigeria. And I've traveled to about 3 other African countries. So I'm going to be talking based on what I know about health data sharing in Nigeria and also about what I have read online about the situation in other African countries. So basically, the issue with health data sharing in Nigeria just boils down to health data infrastructure problems in Nigeria and probably in other West African countries. Nigeria, for instance, have been faced with a couple of challenges, but the major one is electricity. Because when you talk about AI, you talk about analyzing data, large number of data, right? You're talking about data for about 200 million people, for instance. So that's a lot of numbers, right? The situation we have is that some of our existing infrastructure could not adequately allow Nigerians to leverage data sharing initiatives that make things work real quick. But apart from the electricity problem in Nigeria, for instance, we have other issues, and I'm going to be talking about some of them real quick. But first and foremost, let me just give a little background about the public health situation in Nigeria and probably some African countries. So I think that background and that the essence of the background is to put everything I'm talking about, health data sharing, into context as a way of solving a problem, not addressing health data sharing as an end in itself, but as a means to an end to solving the problems that we have here in Nigeria and other African countries. African countries are facing challenges such as infectious diseases, maternal and child mortality, malnutrition, and lack of access to quality healthcare. So we have the problem of access to quality healthcare first, you know. However, in the past, we have seen some effective interventions, such as vaccinations. We've seen interventions that have helped to eradicate polio to a very large extent, reduce HIV/AIDS in Nigeria, and also improve maternal and child health indicators. Right. However, when we come back to how we can leverage healthcare data and AI, and all of that, the challenges that we are having is how we can get, apart from the electricity problem, then we look at other things like the willingness of the government to support the citizens' health in a very proactive way. So, coming back to AI, for instance, what I feel that can be done is the use of computer visions, to solve some problems that we've seen already in our countries and all of that. The use of healthcare data in Nigeria can be addressed to the major healthcare challenges that we have experienced. And then I think the major ones, for instance, malaria, right? About 65 million Nigerians have malaria. So the population of Nigeria is way beyond 200. It's just a little bit beyond 200 million. However, about 65 million out of the 200 million Nigerians have malaria, right? So, and then the right questions to ask is, how can the sharing of healthcare data help Nigerian and African countries to solve this problem, especially Nigeria, to solve these like malaria problems and all of that? Please, I want to be sure that you can hear me. Hello, can I get feedback?
Yes, we can hear you, brother.
Okay, all right, great. Okay. Okay, so I'm talking about how we can, for Nigeria, for instance, look at sharing of health data as a way to solve the most pressing healthcare challenges in Nigeria. And I think the way that can be done is for the government to set up a set of ethical guidelines and standards, because usually people want to own their data. People are skeptical about when people want to give out their data. They are concerned about how their data can be used. And I think one of the speakers mentioned the problem of data being used for the wrong reason. So these are real concerns of people. Once you tell them, oh, you need your data, and then this is what we want to do with your data and all of that. Then another challenge that we're having in terms of healthcare data sharing in Nigeria and some other West African countries is a problem of interoperability. We have lots of healthcare organizations spread across Nigeria, for instance, and then also spread across Africa. But in Nigeria, for instance, people just focus on their own data and then they use that to get the results that they want. We currently do not have a central plug that pulls the data together for researchers and AI scientists to work on and use that to make decisions that will help to improve the healthcare of Nigerians. So I think that is like a major problem. So in talking about healthcare data sharing in Nigeria, the necessary bodies in Nigeria, especially the government, needs to create a system whereby all healthcare organizations can bring their data together and still own it, right? They want to own it and not lose it, and they are scared it can be used for the wrong reasons and all of that. And of course, we talk about the problem of people opting in, opting out, and and all of that really, and I see that as an ethical dilemma, like when you look at it, sharing your health data benefits you, right? And then so why you have to convince you for a very long time to either opt in or opt out, But regardless, for Nigeria, I think the government has to work on data interoperability, and I believe that that will encourage all the healthcare institutions spread across the countries to be open to giving out the data that they have for the necessary agencies to probably make a meaning of the data that is available. And then another way forward for Nigeria in terms of data sharing, I think, is an investment in digital infrastructure and human capital. For human capital, I'm talking about the experts that are going to work on the data. Of course, I know there are lots of AI tools out there. Yeah, so those tools exist, agreed. However, there might still be some shortages of AI professionals, data scientists in Nigeria. So the government and other foundations need to proactively look at practical ways of incentivizing Nigerians to catch up with the latest trends in AI, especially machine learning and deep learning, and of course, leverage the already existing system. In terms of digital infrastructure, the government has to improve electric supply. Electric supply is a major problem in Nigeria. Yeah, so it's getting better actually, but it's still a very big problem because if people have to, for instance, buy fuel to power their generators and all of that, it's more expensive to do data analysis and all that. So, but once those bottlenecks are being eliminated, then it's easier to get people to begin to work on those things. And then another thing I think, another way to improve data sharing in Nigeria, I think, is fostering partnerships and networking, a networking platform among AI, data science, and healthcare professionals, right? So I think there's a need for a multidisciplinary approach to the sharing of healthcare data in Nigeria with experts across fields such as AI, machine learning, public health, medicine, etc. And then another way to improve data sharing, healthcare data sharing in Nigeria, I think, boils down to making policies that makes it easier to implement. A whole lot of people, yes, easy to pay lip service to something. For instance, there was a Nigerian senator some years ago, I think that should be 2-3 years ago, who said he's working on a project to eradicate malaria in Nigeria. And the project got a lot of buzz for like 2-3 years, and then all of a sudden, nothing is said about it again. So I think there's need for looking for more proactive approaches to ensuring that people are not just paying lip service to healthcare data sharing, but that there are real actions taken along that line. And finally, one of the things that I think can be done is for Nigerians and Africans to build their own healthcare data sharing platform, right? Yes, it's good and easy to leverage existing platforms, right? But you achieve more when you build solutions that are tailored to your own problems. That doesn't mean other existing solutions are not active, but it just means that you're more proactive by looking at your own problems and customizing what is there to achieve your own goal. So, and then there are also a lot of opportunities in the use of health data and AI for healthy longevity in Nigeria and Africa, right? And then that can be achieved majorly by improving the data quality and availability. And of course, that refers to, I think lots of speakers have spoken about that. So I'm just going to skip that. So I'd like to conclude by emphasizing the importance of health data and AI for longevity in Nigeria and Africa. For instance, in Nigeria, the average life expectancy in Nigeria is very low, and that is due to probably obvious problems, especially in poor healthcare delivery. So as we begin to talk about the use of healthcare data sharing and all of that, we also have to look at the bottom line. What is the exact problem that needs to be solved? And then how can sharing of health data help to address these problems? I think once we address the major ethical concerns about healthcare data sharing, then it makes sense to begin to leverage and partner with other countries who are doing a lot in terms of health data sharing. So I'm going to stop on that note. Thank you, everyone. If you have any question, you can ask.
Thank you very much, Agbooladeh. Questions? Anyone has? Yes, Didier, please.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Agbooladeh. One very short question. Do you think, but not maybe not an easy one, but do you think that in general Nigerian citizens, but also more largely African citizens from sub-Saharan countries, are more or less in favor of sharing their health data? You know, in Europe, there are people afraid to share or who don't want to share. Do you think, but in general, people are still in favor? Do you think that people in Nigeria and sub-Saharan Africa are more open or less open?
Yes, I think Nigerians generally are open to sharing their health data if they are given the necessary information on how it's going to benefit them. So what has to be done is a lot of awareness on how sharing of their health data can benefit them, the bottom line. So you want me to share my data, no problem. So how does that benefit me? You know, like what is the need for me? So I think that's just a major problem. Yes, so Nigerians are not very, very hard on privacy issue, right? So they just want to be sure it benefits them. Privacy and security issues, yes, they exist, but I don't think they are core reasons why Nigerians would like to share their data. I just think there's need for more awareness in Nigeria about how sharing of health data can benefit them directly. So I hope that answers that question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Agbooladeh. And now we will have the final speaker of our conference, Professor Stephen Lawrence Sorgner. He's a philosophy professor at John Cabot University in Rome, director and co-founder of the Beyond Humanism Network, fellow at the Institute of Ethics and Emerging Technologies, research fellow at IHWA Institute for Humanities and IHWA Women's University in Seoul, academic advisor of Humanity Plus, and visiting fellow at Ethics Center of Friedrich Schiller University in Vienna. He's editor of more than 10 essay collections and author of many monographs that we will post in chat. In addition, he's editor-in-chief and founding editor of Journal of Posthuman Studies, Further on, he's in great demand as a speaker in all parts of the world, and a regular contact person of national and international journalists and media representatives. So, Stephen, the floor is yours.
Yeah, many thanks for that kind introduction. Yes, actually, sort of the discussion which took place about 20 minutes ago, that was right at the core of what we really need to discuss. No, who owns the data, and shouldn't it be compulsory, obligatory for all citizens to share their personalized, digitized data, given that a universal healthcare system, that we've got a universal healthcare system, and we all want to benefit from that. And sort of the counter argument which was presented, there should be an opt-out version. Well, I think firstly, it undermines the goal of collecting digital data in the first place, and secondly, it actually undermines social justice. So that's basically the outer framing, and what I'll provide now is really some wider philosophical implications concerning the relevance and the importance of collecting and using personalized digital data. So data are the new oil, and that's widely held by economists today. Digital data are intellectual property. Oil, on the other hand, is a natural product. They are different entities, clearly. The assessment is nevertheless accurate, as both entities involve money, power, and influence. With the European General Data Protection Regulation, it is enormously difficult to collect digital data in a comprehensive manner in Europe. However, the relevance of digital data can hardly be underestimated, as they are needed for scientific research, technical innovations, use of resources and energies, for political decision-making, and for numerous other reasons. And it even sort of, just focusing on health, it really, last year it came out, BioNTech recently established several new production sites in the UK. And one reason for them doing so was the GDPR. And they need personalized digital data for working on their anti-cancer drug. And they were not allowed to basically use and get hold of this data in Germany, but they're permitted to do so in the UK. And this only shows the relevance, why we desperately need to rethink the use of digital data. In the US, the digital data collected by the big tech companies. In China, it's an even more efficient way by the state, but as data are also the basis for the social credit system. The relevance of collecting digital data can hardly be underestimated. And Europe refrains from collecting, analyzing, or from allowing to collect, analyze, and use it efficiently. It's this basic attitude that is currently the central challenge for Europe. If digital data are as relevant as widely held by economists, then the GDPR will have significant consequences for Europe, leading to further economic decline, as innovation and research can only be efficiently realized in other countries like China, who basically have access to these data. The necessary digital data are available there. If Europe is worse off economically, the middle class will probably be the first to feel it strongly. They will either absolutely or relatively worse off than before. When this is the case, those affected look for culprits, which they usually find in the dissidents and foreigners, the refugees, other minority groups, or the evil other in general. The tension becomes more and more intense until civil war will break out. And that is sort of another likely implication, given the relevance of digital data and it's our way of handling them. These are the prospects, namely when financial resources are no longer available as they have been. It's the present legislation that will lead to discord, discontent, and turmoil in Europe. And for this reason, a rethinking of the importance of digital data is essential. My proposal is that personalized digital data must be collected by the state. It must be a default to give away the personalized digital data. Depersonalized versions of it can be sold to companies then from the state, which they can analyze them. And the analysis of personalized digital data should be done primarily also by algorithms, since humans are easily corrupted. And this is sort of the way to avoid problematic misuses of the data. The key takeaway, however, is that the financial gain realized by the state through the algorithm should be used in the general interest. And the interest that is widely shared is to live healthy longer. It's a prolonged health span. That is basically what most people are interested in. They identified a better quality of life with living longer healthily. And that's why the state needs to take that insight carefully, and that's why the universal healthcare system, the health insurance, is such a wonderful and important achievement. So the profits generated by the state, by means of the collection of the digital data, they should be used to pay for public universal health insurance. So in this way, it is not a depropriation. It's not taking away our property, our intellectual property. It's actually our way of paying for that universal healthcare system. Then digital data would actually be used such that it's in the people's interest, such that it's in a democratic interest, because we would get what we're interested in, a universal healthcare system, and increased health span is clearly in the interest of most people. Currently, what is happening is that full consideration of digital data is being dispensed within Europe. It's being used in the US to increase the wealth of the tech entrepreneurs. In China, it exists to consolidate authoritarian political orders. Nowhere are digital data being used in the interest of the people. For this reason, the meaning of digital data needs to be rethought. And I want to highlight sort of just the really overall picture, really on a grand scale, which other players now come in and what needs to be considered, and how this war for digital data is actually already occurring. And the new players are the new Silk Road, Chinese Silk Road, and the Elon Musk SpaceX. SpaceX operates a satellite network called Starlink, which is designed to provide internet access in remote regions around the world. There are currently well over 2,000 Starlink satellites in orbit, making the company the world's largest satellite operator. By 2027, the number is expected to increase to well over 10,000 satellites. The company currently produces around 5,000 satellite antennas and up to 45 satellites per week. Musk is expected to radically revolutionize the options for both accessing the internet and for collecting digital data. The extent to which we want all this, the limits within which this should happen, and the extent to which we can intervene here urgently require a social discussion process before too many facts have already been created in this area. As Starlink sends more and more satellites into orbit, they are taking up more and more space, more and more property. It's like the colonization of newly discovered continents. Uninhabited space is occupied and processed, and new property is generated in this way. Near-Earth space is extremely limited and coveted, as it can be used to make the internet available on Earth, as Starlink has impressively demonstrated in Ukraine. These developments are being taken very seriously in China. The People's Republic has also demonstrated in the past that it's capable of destroying satellites in a targeted manner. They actually shot down one of their own satellites just to demonstrate that they are capable of doing so. For this reason, China has already explicitly threatened to destroy Starlink satellites as soon as they are perceived as a threat to China's internal security. Was this the reason why Musk recently banned Ukraine from using Starlink for military purposes? Was he afraid that his satellites would be destroyed? Was he afraid of losing his dominance in space? However, near-Earth satellites are not only relevant for military conflicts, but also have a political significance that goes far beyond this. If Starlink satellites were to be used efficiently and cost-effectively to provide the internet, then many users would resort to this option. Instead of requiring a national internet provider, Starlink will allow users to access the internet with the same tariff in different countries and even on airplanes. However, this also means that all data would flow via the Starlink system, which could then be tapped and analyzed by Starlink. If data is the new oil, then this approach would have enormous military, political, and economic consequences. Musk would not only be able to further increase his own wealth in this way, but also his ability to exert political influence. If Musk ever wanted to assume high political office, he would have the opportunity to exert direct influence via personalized advertising. The importance of the Starlink project can therefore hardly be underestimated. The situation would become even more challenging if further projects are being realized, like storage centers for digital data on the moon. And there are several reasons for moving into this direction. By creating buildings on the moon, new property gets generated. Land on Earth is owned by someone. The fight for land on the moon has been initialized by the various space missions. Forbes, the magazine, has mentioned the following December 2022 already, so a bit more than a year ago. Quote, Lone Star wants to achieve data on the moon in its lunar data centers to protect that data from human or natural damage and data loss. In addition, as more activities are done on the moon that generate data or need data processing, having a lunar data center facility will avoid the latency and energy consumption penalties from sending the data back to Earth, unquote. In China, another big player, for quite some time, we've seen global fights for digital data. China seems to have the most promising strategies for gathering digital data. China created the digital firewall, which has destroyed the internet as a global entity. Inside China, China has a political right to gather all digital information, and they use it for their social credit system. Outside of China, digital data can be collected by means of Huawei, Alibaba, and TikTok. Digital data is relevant for financial, scientific, as well as for technical flourishing. If digital data is the new oil, then it's difficult to imagine how any nation can stop China from becoming the economically most flourishing nation worldwide. Economic flourishing also plays a role for political influence, which goes along with military power. This analysis has various further implications. The salaries go up in China, products can no longer be produced as cheaply as it used to be the case when China was still extremely poor only a few decades ago. However, they focus on innovation and the latest technology and were able to realize an enormous economic growth. Now, cheaper workers are needed in Chinese companies, lower energy costs, as well as reduced expenses for logistical purposes. All these goals can be realized in various African countries, and that's why sort of part of they established one reason why established like the New Silk Road in selected African countries. The salaries are cheaper, the sunlight can be used as an energy source, and the cost for transporting goods to Europe are much lower than from China. In addition, many African countries have important natural resources to offer. It is widely shared conception that the natural resources are the prime Chinese motivation when it comes to their interest in Africa. And again, it's simply another story of colonialism and exploitation. However, the issue is much more complex, and the following insight needs to be noted. I quote from a study. The proportion of Chinese FDI into mining is far lower than that of other countries such as UK, France, and US. Chinese 21%, the other countries more than 40 or 43, 37% in 2019. It's not the case that the natural resources don't play any role, but the other factors mentioned before, like cheaper workforces, played an at least as important role as the natural resources, if not a significantly more important one, to build and run companies and to produce goods that is also needed in a developed infrastructure on a high level of education. China is involved in many related projects. By expanding their influence in many African countries, it's not only possible to produce good, realize a political influence, but also to have exclusive access to the masses of digital data which get produced there. And this is sort of, if we take it serious, this is an enormous benefit, which again goes along with why they're investing all that money in these countries. Digital data are power, and the countries which manage to collect the data most efficiently seem to have the most promising outlook for a flourishing future. Silicon-based transhumanists talk a lot about the implications of digitalization, whereby topics like mind uploading, digital consciousness, as well as the simulation argument are discussed most often. All these topics are fun to talk about, and they can enable intellectuals to get a clearer understanding of who we are and how we relate to others. However, from a pragmatic perspective, none of these issues is of any relevance. If one takes the issue that a sufficiently developed general AI will put humans into a suit too seriously. It distracts us from being focused on the philosophical issues which are actually of an enormous pressing relevance, like the issue concerning the meaning of digital data. It seems to me that the following question is the most central. How can we collect and use digital data in a democratic manner? As digital data are the new oil. Data of central relevance for scientific, technological, as well as political endeavors. It's already the case that Chinese scientists publish more peer-reviewed articles than US American scholars. This is no surprise, as data are needed for studies in social sciences and natural sciences, as well as engineering, and in particular, obviously, the healthcare sciences. China can collect data within China as well as outside of China. US American companies cannot collect the data so easily as they cannot simply legally force people to share their data with them. And this is the reason why the financial, scientific, as well as political flourishing of China seems to be extremely likely in forthcoming times. Given the enormous interest of China in selected African countries, it seems likely that it will have some promising spillover effect for these countries concerning education, infrastructure, as well as employment. And these developments also seem to be sustainable as they are related to some long-term decisions, changes, and investments. Will this be in the long-term interest of these countries? This issue is a separate challenge, which is related to the question which interest is most relevant. Is it freedom or financial well-being? How successfully will China manage to import their own cultural structures into the above-mentioned African countries? Concerning education, infrastructure, sustainable energy, healthcare, employment, and related issues, the Chinese investments seem to be in the interest of the countries mentioned. The question which still needs to be analyzed is the following. What will the implications concerning the political and cultural structures which get important at the same time? What we can see from all these former reflections is that we're in the middle of a war for digital data. All the different players are extremely interested in it. And only Europe is basically so stupid with the GDPR on really making it difficult getting access to this data, which undermines our most fundamental interest. The USA is not, so we are in the middle of the war for digital data. Musk and China are extremely strong players. In particular, sort of really with the Starlink system, I'm extremely astonished by the potential it has for collecting data. China as well, and the US is not doing so badly either. However, the situation in the EU with the GDPR is already such that an enormously successful country like BioNTech sets up new centers in the UK as the data privacy regulations in the EU do not allow them to make the research necessary for the anti-cancer drug they are working on. And this alone should give us to think and should give us a reason to rethink the meaning of digital data. So many thanks for your attention. And now I'm looking forward to this discussion with you on these really pressing issues.
Thank you very much. So the floor is open. Any questions? Yes, Didier?
Yes, thank you, Stefan. Of course, you know that globally I agree with you, but that the problem is we are in such a world where privacy seems to be so important, especially in Europe, that it's very difficult to imagine a solution like the solution you promote. So let's continue with kind of a provocative question to your provocative proposal. Should it be kind of, you say it should be compulsory? Your idea in one sentence is, okay, now the state has to use the data for for scientific research, and it is prohibited, let's say, really prohibited to make this impossible. And should it be a crime, or at least against that you can be fined if you try to escape the obligation, or should it be only let's say a legal obligation, but there is no problem if you don't do it? yeah, that's kind of, and then maybe another question, less provocative, is I think the situation at the moment in some Scandinavian countries is already that people share their data. Almost all people share their data. And I heard that even in Sweden, I think you are really obliged. So what is, in your opinion, the best country at the moment close to your ideas, and what is missing there? And,
Yeah,
and
thanks a lot, Didier.
Maybe one last thing. Maybe you can say just 2 or 3 sentences about the situation that you probably know about Germany, because it's something not coming a lot when speaking about sharing of health data. The situation in Germany, I think it's kind of not very advanced, but you can confirm or infirm.
Sort of, if just having the experience, sort of in particular living in Italy, and but also having a background in Germany, or being German, it is. I know it is just in particular sort of during the COVID to see here in Italy, all the data actually gets in a way. If the health data is sort of you have it saved sort of together with the taxes. And so that is already a much better solution concerning some availability, at least, of digital data. In Germany, there was no centralized storage. How many vaccines you received? How many COVID vaccines you received? I've heard of people. There were some rumors who wanted to try to get as many anti-COVID vaccines as possible. They managed to get like 20, 30, and maybe even more, because there's simply no general storage center. It is absolutely absurd to treat digital data, which is so important, in that manner. I mean, given the relevance of digital data, which we see, and the fight which is already taking place on a global scale for these digital data, and of course, I understand sort of what you say. No, I'm aware of the difficulties of realizing sort of the suggestion I'm presenting in Europe, because sort of there is such a high estimation for privacy and so on. But the thing is, I fear it will be too late, probably, when we realize all the different implications, sort of global implications, which not collecting digital data has. And that means once we're actually both with respect to scientific research in general, but also with respect to policymaking, economic implications, in particular also with obviously healthcare systems, once we're so backwards, once we're so far behind, and I fear that we might already be though far behind, or at least on the way towards, then that it will be too late to turn things around, to come up with a different solutions. And so it will have consequences not only for the healthcare, but also for our economic situation, and therefore also. But money in the end is needed for keeping up with the social security systems which we have. And if digital data are as important as we make them out to be, as economists think they are, then in order to pay for the social security systems, and in particular for the universal healthcare system, we have no other option than to rendering it the default. Should it then to giving away the personalized digital data a default? Should it be a crime? Should it be sort of what the status? Well, we need to come up with the specific details. But what is definitely important, so I don't want to make a judgment on that sort of just out of hand. However, what is important is that there shouldn't be any opt-out issue. So basically, no, it is part of your part. You're as someone who's a resident in the country, you're part. You're insured. You've got a health insurance, so you benefit from it. And so it is part as your payment for that healthcare system. You are basically obliged to share the digital data. So you could say, well, in the name of freedom, shouldn't there be an opt-out issue? Well, but then you would have to pay some money for it in order to opt out, because data is worth some money. However, that firstly, it undermines the motivation of collecting digital data in the first place, to also having an as comprehensive stock as possible. Secondly, if it's cheap to opt out, then many people will use it. Then we don't get comprehensive digital data. If it's expensive, then only the rich will be able to opt out, and then it's undermining social justice issues. So opting out is not a fair regulation either. If you want to have the benefit of that wonderful achievement of a universal healthcare system, you should be obliged to share your digitalized personal data. That's basically the logic I'm implying. And so far, I've not heard any good argument which renders it implausible, besides the one that sort of the widely shared prejudices in Europe are such that we cherish privacy so much that we haven't realized the real importance and impact of why or the meaning of digital data.
Thank you very much. Now I will open the floor. So if anyone has a question for any speaker that was on the conference, sure, he can ask. All right. Then I would also like to invite everyone to read the document of this conference. I'm sending a link to chat. Sorry, I have to put to everyone. And I asked Didier to present the document and also to officially close the conference.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Martin, and thank you, everybody. I will very short share the screen. So to say that this yes, where I am. Do you see my screen with the small text or not?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I will not read everything, because you had a few hours to read it. But the most important aspect is that what we were saying, that it should be possible to really share health data, that AI can be useful for this. In the text, we don't approach exactly the question of opting in, opting out, but we have to know that globally, Stefan, the European health data space is going, I think, in the good direction. No, I'm sure in the good direction. The biggest problem is how fast it is going. And at the moment, in the text that is in discussion is a text where it is possible to have opting out, but that is, let's say, the states who decide. So you can have countries where there is no opting out possibility. So that's it that I wanted to say. If for some reason you disagree with the text, let's say that you have, or for some reason you have a remark, let's say that you have until 1 hour after this meeting, and I think that there will be other discussions other days, but now, if nobody has something to say, I will stop the recording. So this is done, and also online, because I don't know where it is. Sorry. Help me. Sorry about that. Well, normally, I don't know how. Okay, not I will have to.
Do you want me to stop the?
If you know, yes, do it. Sorry.
Okay,
Yes.
try. No, I can only quit the meeting, but only me. So